I understand. Make sure you say at least for that portion. No, because it is your last meeting, my last meeting. So, no, I'm gonna recognize you. That's right. Ask you to say from the same with these, might not be your last meeting. Well, hopefully not, because if we vote on the overrides tonight.
Everything else. I shouldn't complain though, I guess it's... Yeah, it's just so busy. Yeah. I know, like last night,
tipping point.
last night after we got like everybody situated in bed and like the kitchen cleaned and everything, we had talked about starting to wrap the Christmas presents. And I was like, okay, you ready to start wrapping presents? It was 8:30. I'm like, I'm ready for bed.
You're it.
Yeah, I did a few, but yeah, seriously, it's just so much to do. Todd, Sue texted me that my Aunt Sue, she texted me that Dawn found that check.
Where was it?
In her
1 minute warning, everybody. We're going to start in 1 minute. Jimmy?
It's been a pleasure. Let's take a selfie here.
Please do.
Perfect.
Oh, great, thanks a lot. Appreciate it.
Pleasure.
Absolutely, thank you. Many years. Thank you.
Fellas.
Good to see you, man.
Whitney, you're ready to go? We're going to take you first, so, okay. Was there actually something that, all I saw was the communication. Is there something more than that, or? 23? Pull out 23, please.
No, it's supposed to be number 7, but it is 5. You're not doing it. Boy, so number 7.
Sorry.
No, it's supposed to be a bond. Because you're. I'm just telling you the process. Yeah, I'm just the process.
Ready? Here we go. I'd like to call this December 19th session of the Holyoke City Council to order. The clerk will call the roll and record those members present.
Bartley.
Here.
Bresnahan. Greeny.
Here.
Jordan.
Here.
Leahy.
Present.
LeBron Martinez.
Here.
Lisi. Lopez.
Here.
McGee. McGivern.
Here.
Roman.
Here.
Sullivan.
Here.
Tolman.
Here.
Bacon. Here. Valentine.
Here.
All rise for the Pledge of Allegiance, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
God bless America.
And the City Holyoke. And the City Council. Linda?
Mr. President,
Sir, and the city council.
Thank you. Councilor Leahy?
I spoke to the mayor earlier today out of deference to his schedule. Can we pull out the orders regarding the balancing the budget now?
Yes. What I would say is I'm going to give extreme deference to the mayor, but we had one small item before that, and that's for the school department. Then we're going to go to the mayor, if that's okay. All right, and that's relative to, we have 2 gentlemen from the school department here to do item number 7 on the agenda. And if there's a motion to suspend the rules.
Make a motion to suspend the rules to have Dr. Zreik or his representatives come up.
Yep, and I see Mr. Whitney's here, Mr. Soto is from the school department here. So a motion to suspend the rules to now go to item number 7 on the agenda and to also allow those 2 gentlemen to speak to answer any questions. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? So moved. Item number 7 is a communication from Dr. Zreik, who, as you know, is the city receiver and superintendent. It's a communication for an update on the bonding appropriation of $275,000 for a design study in participation of the MSBA's Accelerated Repair Program. And Dr. Zreik further communicates, please let this communication serve as an update on your 8/8/2017 bonding appropriation of $275,000 for a design study in participation of the MSBA's Accelerated Repair Program for projects at 3 schools, Sullivan, Morgan, and Kelly. Progress to date has the state-assigned OPM design team in your school department sharing existing drawings and historic data and utility usage, conducting site visits and analyzing the data to craft cost-effective solutions to replace windows at the 3 schools and boilers at Kelly. The state, by allowing the city the opportunity to pursue multiple projects concurrently, has resulted in great efficiency in this design phase. Expenses through the first phase are as follows. OPM, $20,000. Design services, $92,225. Balance on the bond authorization approved by the City Council, 162,775. It is completely understood any of these projects will only come to fruition pending your further consideration and appropriation. Logistically, the window projects are out of reach for the upcoming summer of 2018 due to the lead times required to manufacture windows and the complexity of design. We do have an opportunity to engage in the boiler replacement at Kelly School this upcoming summer if the construction documents, blueprint specifications, and bid documents are undertaken now. Design fees for this additional effort to comply with MSBA bid package criteria are $54,700. It is our desire to pursue this window of opportunity due to the age and condition of the boilers and the efficiency of the operations of the appropriations so far. Respectively, Drs. Reich.
I agree.
So we have this communication articulating this.
Under discussion?
Okay, a motion to receive, and I'm not sure if there's anything yet here to approve, but certainly to receive for the purposes of discussion. Is there a motion to do that?
I was going to make a motion to send and receive and send to the Finance Committee.
Oh, okay. Well, let's think about Finance Committee for a minute. I'd like the two gentlemen just to speak for a minute. If this is something that has to be approved tonight, otherwise you're probably looking at January.
Well, can I ask a question on that? Why?
Well, how about we have the motion, Jim, and then I'll recognize you.
So I make a motion to have them speak.
Receive, and then, okay, is there a second to that?
Second.
Okay, under discussion, Councilor Leahy.
Well, so here in item number 7, it just says, it's update, bond appropriation for $275,000 to communication. Therefore, normally it does go into finance. So why would we have these fine gentlemen speak tonight on?
Dr. Wright called me. I'm assuming he led me to believe that there was some time sensitivity around this and that they wanted to get our blessing of this repurposing of about $54,700 of this. I believe that's what these two gentlemen are going to speak to. And I just want to then ask, do we have the right paperwork and authorizations in front of us to do that? So if you could address the merits of the issue briefly. I don't think you need to sell us too much on why we need boilers at Kelly School. The second point is, are we postured well here that just this communication alone, if we say, sure, this is great, do we need to take a vote? What do we need to do? Does something need to come from the mayor, then to us? Please let us know. And if it's not, then maybe we have to take other avenues. So take it from there, Mr. Soto.
Thank you. So when we were back here in August, we came and asked for bonding authorization for $275, and we assured the committee that we would not repurpose that money for anything other than a feasibility study. Because there's such a short window now, and we did come way under budget with the feasibility study, we want to take advantage of the timing and move from the planning phase to the design phase. We did touch base with the MSBA, and it didn't require any additional votes, but their recommendation was to run by the city council and make sure, and we wanted to anyway. We wanted to make sure that we upheld our commitment that we weren't going to repurpose any of the money. Right. So.
And I think under the famous, now famous Bartley Amendment, which is almost as famous as the Hyde Amendment, I believe that was written right into the bond authorization, that any change from the purpose of the money or any of that would have to require a subsequent vote of the city council. So do we have the right paperwork to approve that tonight? And if yes, I think we'd be prepared to take a vote, but if no.
What do you know?
The figures that have been presented to you tonight are accurate in that regard and would fall under this particular appropriation. All
right, so I can operate just strictly off of this communication and just somebody make a motion to allow the 54,700 repurposing? If that's.
I'll make a motion to repurpose.
Okay, so the motion's been made and seconded to pass the first reading on a bond authorization change in the amount of $54,700. I haven't heard a point of order yet, so I'm going to say that that's, at the moment, still in order. But if it turns out that the mayor needs to actually give us that in writing, and then we need to vote on it, then that might have to be done by the next council next year. Councilor McGee, under discussion.
Anytime that we redo a bond or repurpose it, it has to come back with the language, especially now that we have Councilor Bartley's language in there that you can't repurpose it unless you come back to the city council. So now we're saying, maybe the language is wrong, we're saying we're repurposing to do the boilers. Then you'd have to have the appropriate language before us to vote on. All you have before you right now is a communication with a number. So therefore, all we're doing is receiving the communication. You're not voting on a communication. You have to vote on the change of the language or the repurpose of it. Now, if we're going to change that's fine. We'll vote for it, but procedurally, I think we're doing it incorrectly.
You're probably right. What will happen though is, and we'll just state this, is if it turns out that a vote that we're about to take on the motion that I'll recognize turns out to be not legit, and it actually needs a bond language amended and before us, not just as we're putting it here on the floor, but requires the mayor's signature in advance of the change, which I believe is usually the case, because all bonding has to originate with the mayor, then you'll be out of luck. This vote won't be effective, and you'll need to come back at the next meeting.
Mr. President?
Yes. Unless the mayor's willing to sign something now, I don't know, but, yeah.
In the original vote for the authorization, it included the feasibility study, and this is just changing the scope of the feasibility study, so it's not changing the bond authorization itself, it's just expanding it, and so I see this more as an update. At least that's how I'm perceiving it from the school department. They wanted to update the council to know that they came in under budget, and then now they're expanding the scope of the feasibility study. And my understanding is that the language originally approved by the council had that understanding in there. I don't have the language on me, but I do know that this is, as far as I know, an update to the council around the expansion of the scope of the services of the feasibility study.
Did Mayor, if you recall, do you know if it had the approval to do this design work for the boilers at Kelly School in the original proposal?
Have it in the original proposal?
I don't believe so.
Feasibility study, so.
On what? On boilers at Kelly School?
Boilers, yeah, so we're not actually repurposing it to a completely different project. We just want to move to construction design and schematic design in conjunction with the feasibility portion of it. It's not moving forward with the construction because we still would have to come back for an appropriation, but it's an opportunity to do the feasibility study and the schematic design at the same time, so that if the council wishes to move forward with this project in the summer, we can actually pull it off in the summer and not.
I think we're supportive of what you're saying. It's just, we just want to make sure we're procedurally okay. Councilor Graney.
Yeah, Mr. President, just a question, point of order. Could we approve with the caveat effective upon receipt of the paperwork?
No, I don't. I think we could just approve this, and if it turns out that that's not sufficient, or bond counsel ultimately says, no, that's not okay, we need specific in writing approval from the council because they have to okay any of our bond language, then I'm sure the mayor's office will come forward and bring that.
Yeah, I agree with Councilor Jordan's assertion and suggestion on that. If we move forward with the vote tonight, and then the finance departments can quickly do research tomorrow and send a memo over to the council confirming or denying that.
Sounds good. All right, any other questions? Okay. All in favor of passing the first reading?
Aye.
Opposed? So moved. Motion to pass the
Motion
second reading?
pass the
Is there a
second reading? Second.
Okay. Any discussion? Hearing none, the clerk will call the roll. A yes vote is to approve a repurposing in the amount of $54,700 to allow the work articulated in this communication 7 for the boilers at Kelly School. A no vote is to deny that. Yes, Councilor Lisi.
I just want to ask one question about this bond authorization. So is this 54.7 in addition to, or
It's a
part
reuse.
of?
A part of. So they had.
So moving from feasibility to design
Exactly.
within the bond. Okay.
Yep,
Okay, I got it. Thanks.
sure. Clerk will call the roll, please.
Lisi,
Yes.
Lopez,
Yes.
McGee, McGivern,
Yes.
Roman,
Yes.
Sullivan,
Yes.
Tolman,
Yes.
Bacon,
No.
Valentine,
Yes.
Bartley,
No.
Bresnahan, Graney,
Yes.
Jordan,
Yes.
Leahy,
No.
LeBron Martinez.
Yes.
10 yeas, 4 nays.
By your vote, you have approved the amendment. Okay, so I believe now I will recognize Councilor Levy, who was going to make a motion to suspend the rules to take up items, which I believe were 18 and 20,
I think
if memory serves me.
18 and 20.
Yep, make a motion to suspend the rules to take up 18 and 20. We'll vote on them sequentially, I would assume, because they're two different items. Is that motion made?
Made the motion, yes.
Is there a second to that?
Second.
Okay, under discussion, Councilor Lopez?
It's not related to this, but I was thinking in going back to the public comments. I don't know how many people you have there. See if
I
they
have
it.
one person signed up for public comment
Second on Councilor Lopez's motion to go to public comment.
to do first,
Yeah,
before the budget.
please. It's
Okay.
only one person.
Well, won't we have to vote on the first one first?
On the rule suspension, the motion has been amended to do public comment, then take the votes on items 18 and 20. Okay? Everybody understand the amendment? All in favor of the amendment? Opposed? So moved. All in favor of the motion to suspend the rules to go to public comment now, then to vote and take action and discussion on items 18 and 20. All in favor? Opposed? So moved. Okay. So that now brings us to public comment. We have one concerned citizen who signed up tonight for public comment. Anthony Soto, who certainly needs no introduction in this room, hails from 10 James Street. Anthony, welcome. Just make sure the mic's on, Anthony.
Thank you, and Merry Christmas to all. I just wanted to come down tonight. I know it was Mr. Jourdain's last meeting. We'll probably have another one before the end of the year, but I just want to come down and publicly thank President Jourdain for the time that I sat here and how he dealt with teaching myself and teaching the ropes on the council. I just want to publicly recognize him for that and thank him for all his years of service, and thank your family for also, because nobody in here could do this without your family. It takes a lot, a toll on one. People think that you just come here and sit around, and some people do, not all, but I just want to thank you and your family, Mr. Jourdain. Honestly, that's President Jourdain. And thank all of you guys too, and Mr. Greeny too, on your retirement from the City Council, and Councilor Lopez, and to all those that are going to be here the next year to come. I publicly ask that you support the public safety, support the schools. Just do that. Just do your best to just remember why you're here and support these institutions that protect, especially the ones that protect us every day. And keep in mind, if we don't have good schools, no one's want to come to our city. And believe me, I'm around the whole country and the state. And if you don't have good schools, people aren't interested where you're at. So support the mayor too. He's been elected for the next 4 years. Let's all try to work together as much as possible. You could always, and I'll do my best to stay more involved too. But let's support one another, because I'm sure everyone in this room is here for a reason, and we love this city. And I do. I love Holyoke, and I just hope for the best for each and every one of you. And God bless you. And again, Merry Christmas. And again, Councilor Jourdain, thank you very much for your service. And again, thank you to your family too. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We really
Dilly
appreciate
dilly.
it. Yes, dilly dilly. And also thank you, Anthony, for your service here in the City Council when we have you. So thank you. That's
Hearing
very,
those kind words.
very, very kind of you to come
We
down.
add his name into all the orders tonight?
Absolutely. He's an honorary co-sponsor of all orders tonight. Absolutely. So we thank Anthony for coming down. It's very nice. Okay, so without further ado, we now turn to items 18 and 20, and we'll take those up sequentially. First up is item number 18. Item number 18 is an order introduced by Councilor McGee that there is and hereby appropriated by transfer in year 2018 $1,101,328 as follows. Various unfilled salary lines, $162,252. Streetlights, $40,000. Various repairs and maintenance, $84,950. Demolition of unsafe buildings, $10,000. Various supplies, $11,995. Various motor vehicle fuel, $28,750. And then stabilization funds, $763,381. All to general fund tax levy, $101,000 $1,101,328. That has been offered by the mayor. And there would have to be, at this point, a motion to, I would assume, go to the first reading on this.
Motion to go to the first reading?
Okay, is there a second? Okay, motion's been made and seconded to go to the first reading. Under discussion, whomever would like to discuss. Councilor Lisi.
I'll go for it since everyone's being quiet. Really simply, we've made these points at a previous meeting. In order to balance the budget and get out the third quarter tax bills, we need to do some sort of transfer. There have been different proposals before us. The proposal that I think makes the most sense is this one that's before us this evening, taking from the stabilization fund, the $1.1 million, and solving the budget gap in order to send out third quarter tax bills. If we don't do that, we're going to see our residents get hit with numerous penalties. They're going to receive their third and fourth quarter tax bills at the same time. They're going to receive the third and fourth quarter CPA surcharge at the same time. And if we don't take it from stabilization, that means that we may be taking it from cuts, deep cuts to our city services. So unless our residents want to begin paying for trash pickup and other amenities, we heard former Councilor Soto before us previously talking about the need to fund our city services, our public safety, and our teacher salaries. This is what the budget is there for. And the budget is very lean. We know this, despite the cuts that we make every year, the budget is very lean. It's as lean as it could possibly be. We have a note from Cinder, our bond counsel, that says that a plan to take money out of stabilization will not have a negative impact on the city's current credit rating, so long as the funds are reimbursed by the stabilization fund, to the stabilization fund before the fiscal year 2018. So the stabilization fund is our rainy day fund. If ever it is raining, it is raining and pouring right now, and this is an appropriate use of our stabilization fund. And I don't think that it's the time to be dragging our feet on the matter. And I would like to see us move forward on this very quickly and expediently, because this is what makes sense for our city and for our taxpayers.
Yeah, can I make a motion to have the mayor who's in the audience say a few words?
Sure. Is there a second? Second. All in favor of suspending our rules to allow the mayor to address the city council? All in favor?
Aye.
Councilor Sullivan? No, do you want to speak? Your hand is up, or do you want to defer to the mayor?
I'll defer to the mayor.
Okay. Alex, welcome.
All right.
The floor is yours.
Thank you, councilors. I just want to preface the conversation, and the first thing I would ask is that the councilors please keep an open mind to the transfers that are before you tonight. It is very important that we have a conversation about this, and I'm here tonight. I want to hear any questions or concerns that councilors may have. I know you've had a couple of meetings over the last couple of weeks to debate and vote on other transfers to balance the budget so we can move forward, set the tax rate, and move on from this process. And just a couple of overall points with about a $1.1 million deficit. One myth out there is that this deficit is much bigger than years past. In reality, this deficit is smaller, if not similar to deficits of years past. It's just a matter of free cash being certified or not. Typically, if free cash was certified, there would be an order for me to transfer free cash to balance the budget. We'd be left with a few $100,000 in free cash to get us through the rest of the year, which we've done successfully in previous years. The issue this year is because the books that are usually closed in late July or early August weren't closed until October 30th, our outside auditors weren't able to work with the auditor's office to get free cash certified to be able to put that transfer before you. And so in order to set the tax rate, balance the budget, this is a temporary request to use $763,000 from the stabilization fund, borrowing it from the stabilization fund until free cash is certified. And so the $1.1 million deficit, what we did was work with all of the department heads across the board, 10% cut from certain expense line items. And if there were concerns from the individual department head, we had those conversations. And those included cuts even in my office, upwards of $9,000 to $10,000. So we've seen $337,000 of cuts from the general fund budget which is important, and that gets us down to the transfer for $763,381 from stabilization. And so I want to sort of present it as this is similar to what we've done in years past, but from free cash. We expect free cash to be certified early next year. We expect to have at least $1 million in free cash. I pledged before the council to immediately ask the council to transfer money from free cash back into stabilization, 100% of this request. For those councilors that may be dubious of that, the council at the end of the day has the authority to deny every free cash request that I put in until I do that. And so I want to make it very clear that it's important that we talk about this tonight. You see that we worked hard with our department heads to reduce the deficit. On a side note, the $337,000 in cuts we've made from the general fund side pretty much make up the general fund part of the deficit when you don't include the sewer side deficit of the budget, and that's a separate conversation. I recognize that. But I think stabilization is a temporary use to borrow it to balance the budget so we can set the tax rate. If we are able to get this done tonight, a councilor is welcome to file a late file order around the tax rate so we could potentially get that done tonight. But to echo the concerns of some residents and councilors here, the prospect of our property owners in the city getting 2 quarters worth of property tax bills plus the annual allocation of the CPA all in one bill, I don't think is a appropriate thing for taxpayers of the city. And I will say I have no interest in pointing fingers. I don't think this is an issue with Room 1. I don't think this is an issue with the City Council. It's an issue right now for the entire city of Holyoke, and I think we need to roll up our sleeves and do what we can do to set the tax rate as we have done every December in years past. And so I just want to thank the council for being available to hear me speak tonight. And if people have specific questions as to some of the transfers or why we're thinking this strategy may be the best, please let me know. I know you've gotten a communication from the tax collector. You've also got a communication from Cinder, who has, told city officials that it won't affect our bond rating if we do a temporary use of stabilization to balance the budget so we can move forward and set the tax rate. So again, I'm open to thoughts and questions about this, and hopefully we can move forward.
Okay, Councilor Bacon.
Thank you, Mr. President. Through the President to Mr. Mayor, if there is such a high level of confidence that if we take the money out of stabilization that we will be able to return it to stabilization early in the new year, then my question to you is why not simply cut it out of the operating budget for unspent expenses that you will not be incurring for the 5 months ahead in the budget that will be remaining, or perhaps it would be 4 if we're getting into February, and then simply restore those expenses once the free cash is certified. It would seem to me to be as easy a budget mechanism as to go into the stabilization fund if you have that level of confidence.
So we do have that level of confidence, and what we have done with $337,000 in general fund cuts to reduce the deficit from 1.1 down to the 763 is, those positions that are vacant, we've gone through line by line with projections. Are we on target to spend less than what we budgeted for that the City Council approved for July 1st? And if we were trending below, figuring out what that difference was and then transferring it out to lower the deficit. So we've literally gone line by line with department heads to reduce that deficit. Obligations that we remained in the budget are things that we need to pay. I mean, there's, as Councilor Lisi said, the budget is not inflated. The growth of the budget over the last 6 years has been minimal, certainly less than the rate of inflation, a couple of percents over 6 years. So there's nothing, superfluous in the budget. We've, like I said, transferred out as much as we can. And even by doing so, we're able to preserve city services. The strategy that I'm asking the council to consider tonight, I think, is the simplest strategy, given that it requires a couple of votes of the council and then later on 1 vote of the council to transfer that money back into the council, rather than individual separate transfer line items within budgets based on trends over the next few months. And so I think this is the simplest way to go about this and the most effective to preserve city personnel and city services in the short term.
And just as a follow-up, but you do take my point that the same end would be accomplished just in a different manner. That's the point I'm making.
To some extent, potentially, but as I said, we were able to transfer money out as we could by identifying those things where we know we would be under budget. So, and that includes my office, as I said.
Thank you.
Counselor Valentin.
Thank you. I will be voting in favor of this. A couple of weeks ago, when our auditor stood at that microphone and explained the situation we were in terms of the free cash situation, there's been several proposals that have been presented to us. Everything has been voted down. And I remember the initial conversation a couple of weeks ago when things were voted down by the majority of this body was go back and figure out where to cut. And that's what we have in front of us right now. So to me, this order regarding the line items and the specific cuts is that compromise that was requested a couple of weeks ago by this body. As this compromise being a combination of the line items plus the $763,381 from the stabilization fund. I think that if everyone has read the letter from our tax collector, it's very specific as to why there are, of course, concerns regarding the timeline we're looking at here. We don't have to repeat everything that everyone said a couple weeks ago. I think we're all very aware. But I do see this as a compromise. I see it as folks asked for, let's see, a line item breakdown here, and this is what's being presented. So I do encourage the majority of us to vote in favor of this so that we can move forward. The tax collector can do what they need to do, and everyone can try to do the best we can with this situation, which obviously none of us want to be in. But I think that continuing to reject the proposals that come before us are not going to really be of benefit to anyone in the city. Thank you.
Thank you. Mayor, just a quick question on the item that's before us today, marked item number 18. How is that different than the proposal that was before us this past Tuesday? Isn't that the same proposal that we had 300 and something thousand in cuts and then the 763 from stabilization? Isn't that the proposal that was voted down Tuesday?
Pretty much. Overall, we got more specific with the cuts, as well as assurance from our outside financial consultant around the use of the stabilization fund, as well as a commitment from my office that we would replenish stabilization and preserve city services. And I certainly respect and I share the concern about use of stabilization. I seldom want to use the stabilization fund, and my advocacy to use it this time is a temporary basis so we can do the function of our government tonight. And I just want to make it clear that I've heard the concerns of councilors over the last few weeks and the level of discomfort of using the stabilization. I recognize that it's there for a rainy day. And like I said, we fully intend and plan to replenish that once free cash is certified. And we're here today because free cash wasn't certified on time. This hasn't happened in recent years as far as I've been in office, and we're trying to do the best we can with the situation that we have.
Okay, thank you. Councilor Sullivan.
Yep. Thank you for the mayor through the chair here. Please.
Yes. Yep.
Mr. Mayor, could you tell, this is in regards to a couple of additional line items that are absent from here. Just curious as to why they're maybe not included. One would be computer system administration. We've got somewhere north of 600,000 in the budget. We're only halfway through the year. I've got to assume that some of these aren't going to be paid until the fourth quarter. Why couldn't we take, that's a huge number. I can't believe it's all spent in the first 6 months. Do you have any insight on that?
Yeah, so the Computer Systems Administration, and again, I will repeat the fact that we went through every department and transferred out money that we knew we weren't going to spend. The computer page in particular is an overall contract with the Holyoke Gas and Electric, and it actually includes a number of different employees that work for HG&E but do IT work for City Hall, the Annex, police, and fire. And so a lot of that money is salaries and benefits for the IT individuals that work under a Computer Systems Administration. And then, furthermore, it's license fees for Microsoft, for email, and things like that. So it's not a thing that we would hold off paying. A lot of that is paid on an annual basis, and if it's not paid on an annual basis, it's biweekly in payroll for the IT employees within that budget. And just to reiterate, any vacant position we've paused on filling those positions to reap as much savings as we could to reduce the deficit to the number that we're requesting this evening.
Well, I understand that, but this money wouldn't be used until the fourth quarter, a good portion of it. Am I mistaken in that?
Well, no, a lot of the license fees and a lot of the IT infrastructure is something that's paid for some on an annual basis. And as I said before, unless we wanted to lay off the IT support employees that fall under that budget, we wouldn't be able to pursue the path that you're suggesting.
I mean, but I don't want to belabor this one all night.
Oh,
But they're being paid by Holyoke Gas and Electric, right? Their salaries are paid by Holyoke Gas and Electric. We're just reimbursing Holyoke Gas and Electric, right?
I'd have to look into the specifics. I don't know the exact specifics off the top of my head.
Okay, well, this is one of the things I think with a little bit of research on the auditor's part, we could get to the bottom of that. There could be $100,000 sitting there out of that $600,000 that's very well spent in the fourth quarter. On the Office of the City Solicitor, we have, I believe, $150,000. I could be wrong on that number, but we have quite a bit of money set aside for special counsel.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And have we depleted, all of the special counsel fees for the entire year have been paid out already? Or is there still money left?
For the most part, I know that City Solicitor Paul Payer either has or is planning to give an update, if you haven't already.
He recently did.
Recently did. And I know at some point there may be a request for additional funds towards the law department. So I know, the funds in those line items that you're referencing have been exhausted or are near being exhausted. And if they weren't, they would have been included in the transfer of cuts. And then our city treasurer has also informed me that in terms of the IT budget, most of those line items are paid at the beginning of the fiscal year in July.
Okay.
Mike, I
So
got
we have the professional, pardon?
Go ahead. Maybe just one more question, if you could. I got a bunch of other people in the queue.
All right, well, just, there's quite a few other of these departments. I just can't believe that they've all exhausted in the first 6 months. One of the line items is for the overtime for the St. Patrick's Day Parade. I don't think we've paid that money out yet. It seems that's $48,000 that could easily be put off till the fourth quarter.
Well, it certainly could, but it's either doing it now or doing it then. And so we wanted to simplify the process as much
Well,
possible.
let's do it now or do it then for everything on the list, and the same with the stabilization fund. If we're that confident that it's going to be back into the general fund in January or February, why can't we have the same confidence for something that's put off until March or April?
Because the cuts that we put in the document to do the transfers out of the general fund are not being replenished. Those are permanent cuts through the end of the fiscal year. And so once free cash is certified, the intent is not to come back to council for free cash to refill the accounts that we're transferring out of now. The only replenishment that would happen is the money that would go back into stabilization. So we found those cuts to reduce the general fund deficit that would be permanent through the end of the fiscal year, looking line by line. But if it's something we know we have to pay, like overtime, parade weekend, or another obligation, or an employee salary, like those are things we know we have to pay, and so we're not gonna to cut that from the budget right now. But we did cut every possible thing we could cut without having to lay off or cut city services that people would then notice.
If I could go to one more, Kevin? No. We also have one called claims and damage settlements. And I believe it totaled over $300,000. I know we haven't settled every claim and damage. We've got money set aside in reserve for these. The same deal. These could be put off to the fourth quarter. It seems to me there's still hundreds of thousands. If we're that confident the money's going to come in, it could be easily restored. It's just a couple of more line items. It's not that much of an inconvenience. Why these couldn't be presented, and a much lesser number for the stabilization fund taken, if it's being done under the same general auspices and guidelines.
Yeah. So, Councilor Sullivan, I see your overall point in terms of looking at different line items. I would just say that the line items that we transferred out are those line items we know based on projections of past budgets, as well as speaking to the department head what they expect to spend. Like the money we're removing has been approved by department heads that, okay, we can do without this money between now and June 30th, so that will allow us to reduce the general fund deficit now. And so by going after the line items that you're suggesting would require us to then go back and ask for money from free cash to go back into those line items. And so the way that we're suggesting tonight makes it so that we're not taking money out of those line items that we're going to need to spend anyway. And as I said, the list of cuts before you that total the 337 number, we're not asking for that money to be replenished. We're able to make those cuts now and permanently through the end of the fiscal year. Rather than take it now and then have to go back later, we're talking about one vote, one line item, one ask instead of several.
Okay, thank you.
No, thank you.
Sullivan, Councilor Bartley.
Thanks, Mr. President. I'll be pretty brief. Mayor, thanks for coming. Appreciate your time as always, and thanks for coming by earlier today. That made for a really nice event, so really appreciate that. And then it's not an easy job, Mayor, but I understand it, and I don't admire your position in this, but I just going to make a couple brief points. Mayor, you and the financial team create this budget and present it to us. We do our best in June to cut what we could. I think we cut up, just say $1 million. I don't remember what it was, but if we hadn't done that, I think we'd be in a more of a tenuous position if we hadn't made those cuts. So we did our best, but to even imply, even hint that a finger pointed would be a city council is disingenuous at best. I'm just saying that we have no control over the budget, none, other than we can make cuts. So to even imply that is unfair. And I just want to briefly say to my Councilor Sullivan, I thought he did a great job. To my friend, the earlier speaker, talk about compromise. The compromise was the exact same number, 763,381 on December 7th, 763,381 on December 9th. There was no change in the number. There was maybe the spirit was there, but the actual change in the compromise, there was no change in the number. So there wasn't, we can talk compromise all day long, but the number didn't change. Then lastly, Mr. President, we keep referencing Ms. McInerney at First Southwest. And if we're going to reference her, if we could just give the whole picture. So if we do make the transfer, she said it would not likely have a negative impact so long as the funds are reimbursed to the stabilization fund before FY18 year end. Not likely. Now, if they're not reimbursed, then that could impact on the free cash certification and compromise the city's ability to reimburse the stabilization fund. In such event, there could be an adverse impact on the city's credit, depending upon the circumstances. So, we have the letter. We all know what the letter says. We all have it. Okay. So let's just say read what it says on there. There's no mince. She doesn't mince words. Even if we make the transfer, there's no guarantee this is going to. If you make the transfer and transfer funds back, Mayor, and we don't have a. You can't give us a guarantee because we don't know what the free cash is going to be. So even if we get the free cash back, the $1 million, which I hope you're right, mm-hmm. and I believe you. I have total faith that if we get the $1 million, I'm sure the first order you would make a transfer back to stabilization. But you can't make a promise like that because you don't know what the free cash is going to be. You can't stay. You can't do that. So there's no possibility of us predicting what the free cash is going to be. Therefore, Mayor, you leave me with an untenable choice here. You really do. And frankly, I'm not likely to vote for the transfer out of stabilization in any form at this point. Thank you.
Well, I would just say thank you, Councilor, and I hope you'll consider voting for it tonight if there's any way in terms of I think the adverse avenue of having to do a revenue anticipation note fund the government would have a more adverse impact. But I do assure that I would put the transfer back into the stabilization fund based on past trends and past predictions. We expect there to be at least $1 million in stabilization, if not more. And in terms of, I don't think I implied that there was any fault or blame within the city council, and I don't remember saying anything of that sort, and I apologize if I did.
Okay, great. Councilor Graney.
Just quickly, Mr. Bartley said, took away some of my thunder, but I'd like to know what the balances are in some of these accounts. We have no idea of knowing what the balances that are left for the next 6 months or so, to see if they're, transparency is one of my favorite words, and I'd like to see that.
I would say to that typically the city auditor provides monthly budget reports to the city council, appointed by the city council, and accountable to the city council. And similar to the city council, I have not received monthly budget reports.
And under ordinance is under your day-to-day operational control. But
that's true.
Yes. Councilor McGivern had his hand up.
Thank you, Mr. President. And I'd just like to preface my remarks with a brief apology from 2 weeks ago and thank Councilor Bartley for pointing out I did misspeak when we were talking about the retirement issue. And I went to say that PEROC did not communicate with the city, which I found out is true. However, I did say that the mayor's office did not communicate with Cheryl Dugrey and the retirement board. That is untrue. And I apologize to this body, to the mayor, to his office, and to Cheryl, who I've had some good conversations with. Ironically, I just want to go back real quick because, PEROC, in my opinion and others' opinions, overreacted to a temporary use of what is a city expense not due until June and could be touched by the Department of Revenue's own admission, owned allowing to say that's a good way to temporarily use money as long as you put the retirement money back. And that's what we're arguing about here tonight, is city expenses being used or how much city expenses aren't going to be needed to the fourth quarter. We had the ideal one in front of us for the entire amount. And even if we didn't put it back ourselves, if there's no guarantee about free cash, the retirement board can levy the city to get the money back anyways. So it's not on the table. It's over the dam, it's gone by, but that kind of diffuses much of the argument I'm hearing this evening. I understood fully and will always understand the stabilization fund. I do believe that a temporary use of the stabilization fund is more appropriate than doing line item cuts in the budget. I understand that, some people are adamant about that, and I don't expect 10 votes for the full amount to come out of stabilization. So I do see this as a compromise. But I will note that I'm not in favor of cutting the budget because our budget is not a 1-month budget by state law. Our budget is a 12-month budget. We have expenses that are projected for 12 months. Our problem isn't the expenses that are projected out. It's the revenue not coming in and the unknowns with free cash. So, yes, you can fool yourself by saying you're cutting the budget, but we're going to put it back. That's not the perfect way to do it. So what we have in front of us is a compromise. Half from stabilization, half from line item cuts, temporary use, the best of everybody's ability. We'll be able to replace it. The free cash number we know. What we don't know is reconciling prior year's free cash and the problem that's going on with reconciling the auditors, the books themselves, how late it took place. We have new people in new positions. They're feeling their way. I think we have the best we have in front of us. We have a solution. No vote to balance the budget is not a solution because there will be consequences. We don't know the consequences. We don't know how much those anticipation notes will cost, but there will be a cash flow problem. Banks, financial institutions, most people pay their taxes through their escrow account. A bank in a financial institution holding your mortgage is not going to release your escrow funds unless the city tells them how much you owe. That means the city's going to get less money. Those of us that are at the tax classification hearing, heard our assessor say it's very simple. If the bill doesn't go out by the 1st, the bill goes out, isn't going to be due to May. Those financial institutions will hold our escrow money because it's their money until they pay the bill, until May. They will not pay it early. You know, maybe our local banks will pay it early. You know, People's is a great corporate citizens and banks like that, but not everyone will be in that situation where it will create a cash flow problem, which means the anticipation notes will be higher. We need to do something. None of us are happy. None of us are happy about the retirement money. None of us are happy about stabilization. None of us are happy about the budget cuts. Not one of the scenarios is perfect. But a compromise is what we need to do to make government go forward, and I would suggest this is the compromise that's in front of us that will make it work, and then we can get on with the tax vote.
Mayor, a couple questions and observations. One was that you recall that the City Council, as it was alluded to earlier, cut approximately $1 million from your request.
Yes.
The original deficit in your communication to us was 1.3 million deficit. City Council cut it down to 300,000 deficit. So I would say that this is where the decision begins. Okay, I'm not going to call this pointing fingers. I'm just going to call these observations. So we have the City Council cuts $1 million, and had the City Council not cut that, this request this evening would be $2.1 million, just so we're all aware of how this process works. So we cut $1 million. Had the revenues, and this is where I'm very concerned about the practices, and we have to ask ourselves, how do we get to where we're at today? A lot of things had to go wrong to get us to the point of where we're having this conversation this evening. And the reason for that is that we're overstating revenues in the tax recap sheet, such that when Brian was the city auditor, he would always well underestimate those revenues. And as a result, when things would come in better, we wouldn't come up short. We'd have extra. In fact, it would go to next year's free cash. And as a result, we always had these very generous next year free cash numbers. I mean, for quite a run there, we would have $6 million, $7 million, $5 million a year. And we had a lot of levy capacity. Okay. So then we have the issue of the new growth. So in your budget estimate that came into us on the recap sheet, it said that we would have $617,000 in new growth. Reality is we ended up with $195,000. The point is that 400 and something thousand we now have to make up now. Mm-hmm. Had a very conservative estimates been used in June, we would have been able to be in a position to make all of these cuts to the budget at that time in June. I think you had a resolve of the City Council to say we were going to cut the budget down as much as humanly possible. And the only reason the 300,000 remained, that we didn't go all the way to zero and we didn't cut another 300, was because we were under the opinion that the new parking authority ordinance changes and the rate increases were going to raise 250,000 in revenue. I have never gotten a report back, but I don't think that ended up panning out, but maybe it is. Between the meter increases, Suffolk Street, all these rates, it was viewed from the DPW that we could raise about $500,000 a year, half of that or thereabouts, maybe about 250 by the time we got it off the ground. So what we're talking about with a focus this evening about having these as cuts as opposed to transfers from the stabilization fund is, that's how this would have played out back in June, okay? These items would have been cut. They shouldn't be in the budget right now anyways, because you and us collectively, fingers on all 16 of us, have a duty to have a balanced budget. And we should not be passing budgets unless we're at break even. And hoping on a prayer that some point down the road it ends up being balanced. We know now that had we not cut the million, we'd be at 2.3 right now. And so we would have cut another million. So the point from some of us on this perspective of the view of how to run government is that we would not put these monies and appropriate them in the budget in the first place and not be drawing from the reserves. Here's why. The reserves are ultimately going to be your saving grace someday. And when I say reserves, there's really, as I've said multiple times, three pots of money. One is the excess levy capacity, so we could tax more. That's gone, 100% gone. We're now at a point where it is unprecedented. If we had not cut the million, you would have not had enough free cash. Even under the most generous estimates that are possible, you would have not had enough to balance the budget. Because if we left the 2.3, at most, the biggest number, you've mentioned $1 million here tonight, but the biggest number I've heard mentioned is about 1.5. So we would have not had enough to balance the budget based on the 2.3 that we would have been short. So now if we use every single dollar of free cash, we would be able to cover these transfers here potentially this evening, just about. So if we're going to get $1 million, that would put $763,000 back into stabilization. Then we're left with about $250,000, maybe $500,000. Let's just be a little more generous and call it $500,000. You and I both know, and everybody in this room knows, there's going to be a lot of transfers that come down the end of the road. This is short, that's short, overtime is short, this one's short, that one's short. All these things that are chronically underfunded are short. So we know we can't draw on levy capacity because that's all gone. We're at levy ceiling. We now know that we have no free cash, so that's basically gone. We're in a structural deficit. We actually do not have enough money to cover the amount of money that we're short in the structural deficit of the city budget by free cash. That would have been this year. That's a good example. So now we're left with stabilization fund is the last pot left. Some people would say that, well, just take it out of there and we just put it back, or let's just take it out of there, and why do we even have all that money in there in the first place? And we all understand, if you're really following this closely, that that is what's keeping our bond rating solid. Taxpayers and public employees need to appreciate that if we didn't have a stabilization fund that is of the amount that it is, we would have a much reduced bond rating, which would cost the city millions more a year in interest charges, which would make the budget that much more harder. Then your debt and interest charges would be that much more, and you can see how that slowly evolves down. The other thing we have to also consider that are going to be problematic to the city is, I just watched, and I think it's on the agenda this evening, the retirement allocation. Did you notice that the projection starting in 2020 going forward, because you're about to vote on the FY19 budget, they kept it the same for this year, but it's going to go up $600,000 a year for the next 5 years. So say it's $3 million or $2.5 million more just to pay the required retirement contribution to the city. Where's that money going to come from? The budget is growing $1 million a year, and we don't have extra revenue coming in to cover that. So the point is, that's what ultimately is going to be the decision around the stabilization fund. If there's operating deficits, we just need to cut them now and be done with it. And if that means that we're going to have reduced services, it is what it is. I know there's been desires to give additional funds to different places, but if we don't have it, we don't have it. You know, it's really quite that simple. We can't spend money we don't have. And I don't believe making consistent withdrawals, which is the alternative, that's where we're headed, is if we start making consistent withdrawals from the stabilization fund to cover the operating structural deficit, which is growing annually. There's no question, I've observed it for years. And by the way, we're taxing the public $24 million more a year than we did 15 years ago. So we've raised taxes through the roof here, and yet we can't balance the budget. So the point is, this is why you're getting pushback on notions of taking these monies from stabilization, because of the fact that, one, those dollars are going to be needed. Two, we should be making the cuts, and had the cuts been announced and not these overestimates that were done at the budget in June, we wouldn't even be having this. We would have just cut the $1 million back in June. You'd be home, we'd all be on item number whatever, and none of this, everybody be getting their tax bills and yada yada. The other concern that's lurking in the back, and I'm not sure what that means, is there's this $2.5 million accounting issue. Is that even half as bad as it says? What if these accounts don't reconcile? And what if
we don't get the amount of free cash that we're estimating? What if we have to, from these insurance accounts, it doesn't pan out? That's the other risk. And I'm very concerned that that needs to be addressed. Obviously, somebody's concerned about it because we can't get our free cash certified until that's resolved. Those are all the issues that are sitting out there. As far as the doomsday around the tax anticipation note, I can only recall one other time in the past that we've done those, at least while I've been here. Certainly not desirable, but it's not hardly exactly the end of the world either. There was one year that there was a whole reason, I don't recall, it was probably at least 15, 20 years ago since it happened, but that did happen. But that's the situation we're in this evening, and what I would be suggesting to you is just make these cuts from these various line items. Councilor Sullivan articulated a few, and if everything pans out and it all turns out great and the 2.5 is nothing and the free cash comes in at 1.5 or 1.1 or whatever, then we re-put the money back in the budget. I just don't want to start the precedent that we're going to overstate everything at the beginning, and when that doesn't pan out, and I don't even want to get into the whole tracking of September, we should be getting free cash certified. For years, we always had free cash in September. But I know we have a new auditor. He just started in April. Then it was by October, November. I don't recall any communications to the city council talking to us in October or November saying, we're 2.5 million on this discrepancy. Free cash still isn't certified. We've got all these problems. I haven't seen those either from your office or from the auditor, in fairness to you. I don't recall him saying it either. This all just sort of came into a head over the last couple of weeks. Mm-hmm. And here's where we're at. So I don't know if you want to share any thoughts about that, but my concern is, one, we don't know what free cash is going to be. Two, we need that money in stabilization. This is not the way to budget. And three, we still have more expenses that are going to draw upon whatever free cash you have, and we don't know what those numbers are yet, and I don't know if you do.
Well, I'll just be brief. I think you brought up a lot of good points, and as mayor of the city, obviously I share many of the same concerns that you do. This is what we do each and every day, and of course I thank the council for the process that they did to cut the budget as much as they did back when I presented it. I would just say that when we look at the revenue projections, number one, I as mayor and other mayors are relying on the information they get from finance department heads, and so if the assessor is saying that estimated new growth based on property values is X amount, the assessor puts that amount for new growth in that sheet, and no blame to our assessor. Things sometimes fluctuate and change. Sometimes we meet it, sometimes we go over, sometimes we go under. This year we went under his estimate, and it's not the role of the mayor to say, hey, assessors, I don't think you're doing it right, put in this number. That's not what I should do. I should rely on the experts around me to put an accurate number in that sheet, and so that's what we put there. And so I think the change in the estimated new growth in that document, plus changes in state aid, I mean, at the time I present my budget, we're relying oftentimes on the House Ways and Means budget, and we try to update the council as much as we can as the debate of individual line items goes on over the summer. But that oftentimes changes too, based on vetoes or the governor's budget, House, Senate, charter school reimbursement, and other things. And so none of us want to see the deficit balloon. None of us want to be in the position we're in tonight. And as Councilor McGivern said, I'm not, if we get the votes tonight, I won't leave happy either. I think, we do have some fundamental issues we need to address. The structural deficit is one of them. I've put proposals before the council to help address that. You and I happen to disagree on the sewer rate increase. I do think a lot of the amount we're asking from stabilization would be eliminated, both if we collected back sewer fees, but also if we implemented the first sewer fee increase in the last 10 years in the city of Holyoke. So we can disagree on ways to address a structural deficit, but I do have some ideas, and I want to continue working with the council in the coming weeks and months to address it. But I think the issue tonight, despite our differences, is we do need to figure out this problem. We need to fund the government in the coming months and coming quarter, and I think we need to consider this as a compromise. It's not perfect. If free cash was certified, this would have been a request from free cash, and procedurally it's not. And so again, this is an interim pit stop to be able to move forward with government and set the tax rate.
Right.
I don't think it's an ideal scenario, but I do think it's the best option we have given the circumstances tonight.
I'll only close since you did raise the sewer point, and I do appreciate and respect your position. Again, I think we've articulated the position that we want the 15% that aren't paying to be shut off before we ask the 85% who are already paying the highest rates in Western Mass to pay more, and that we have given a proposal multiple years ago to your administration and the water department to work together to get that done for that shut off. We gave all the authority. It would have generated $700,000 a year. What we could have done right now with an extra $1.4 million would have covered this in full, and we would actually have a more balanced and fair system that means everybody has to pay. Yeah. But I did want to I do appreciate your position. On the contrary, I do want to recognize, I believe Councilor Leahy had your hand up.
Yeah, well, thank you. So let's just back up a second. So exactly what, I think, Mayor, thank you for coming down here. One of the things you had said in the opening is the outside, the people we use as consultants didn't get this information to October?
We didn't close the books until October 30th.
Why is that? Because historically, we've always done that prior to that.
Yeah, we typically close the books usually late July, early August.
So why July, August, September, why 4 months later?
I think as has been alluded by Councilor Dridden and others, we have a new auditor that's in his role since April, and so there was potentially a bit of a learning curve there. Fortunately, when we really realized that things were lagging, Katie Jakowski, who had been acting auditor at one point, Bellamy, who was the former auditor, helped step up and work with Josh to close the books.
Yeah, I certainly won't put this on Josh's shoulders because, the city is a team. Mm-hmm. We have to operate as a team. But 4 months, that just seems like something's not working as a team, and that's unfortunate. And, as you said, we got a beautiful letter that's going out to the city here saying, from the taxpayer, saying that if we don't do this tonight, the Holyoke taxpayers will suffer. They're going to have the third and the fourth checks plus the CPA. And their checks most people are going to send their checks in for the third quarter, so I guess what this is alluding to, and the checks will go stale. I'm not exactly sure what checks go stale means, because checks, I believe, are good for 6 months at least. And so if the checks do come in, they can keep them there. And one of the issues that this person said, that their office will get bombarded with calls. Well, that's the role you got yourself into. That's not a bad thing. It's good that taxpayers are calling the office, mm-hmm. I think. So reading that letter, I thought was just, as Kevin said, it's pushing the blame on the city council once again, and that's not the way we work here. That's not the way I work here. I think waiting from June and finding out that the auditor needs help is not a team effort. Any team sport you ever play or any office, if it was a private company, that wouldn't happen. You would certainly have people stepping up and helping the new person, making sure that they're trained. The thing is, Holyoke has done what Holyoke has done, and I think in the financial team, is a failure to properly budget and anticipate this revenue. Now, what happens? The golden question is, at the end of the day here, so say if you get the 10 votes, I'm sure you have, at least 5 I can think of. What happens if we don't get the free cash to cover this? What's going to happen? What's that, everybody keeps talking about this Cinder lady who I've met once in my life, but she keeps sending emails out, I guess. What will happen to the bond rating then? If it doesn't cover, it's not going to be good. So, this is just simple fundamental economics or simple math. We've known about this since July, August, and now it's the 9th. It's just it's too late. I'm not happy about this. I think that maybe what we should do is instead of we get a new auditor in. Somebody had mentioned that we have new people and new positions, and they're trying to feel their way through. I think that's the wrong way to handle it. I don't think it happens in private business. I think that what happens is if people are new, they get trained, They bring people in, they bring trainers in, they make sure that the people know what they're doing in the positions, so they're not out there swimming alone. And I think maybe what we should do is bring some consultants in and try to make sure that the financial team here is doing the right thing for the people, because I don't think that's happening right now. Thank you.
Yeah.
Well,
I would just
go
say,
ahead, Mayor.
first, Councilor Leahy, I know you had said, I just want to clarify that I am in no way pointing fingers at the council. I didn't write any communication as such.
I didn't say you did.
No, I know. I just want to clarify that in no way am I blaming you as an individual councilor or any councilors here, for that matter, for what we're in. I think, we have to take collective responsibility as to where we are as a city and how we move forward tonight. And, I share your concerns. This isn't an ideal scenario, but I think it's a solution and it's a compromise that we could look forward to tonight. And even if you as a councilor are not completely in favor of my proposal tonight, I ask you to still consider it so that we could move forward. There are practical implications of either vote, right? And we have to think about what the impact would be on the average taxpayer, no matter whose responsibility or whose blame it is. And I think this is a lesson for all of us. In terms of the reconciliation issue that came up a couple of weeks ago, we are working with a separate outside consultant to work both with the auditor and treasurer's office to reconcile the cash book with the ledger. There also is a possibility that reconciliation will benefit the city, but it's too early to sort of tell at that point. It's not necessarily a bad thing. It's not necessarily a good thing. So when we have more information, we'll certainly share that with the city council. And I do want to thank every member of the finance team, including Josh. I mean, we all did work as a team, particularly over the last, several weeks, to make sure we got more accurate information and move things forward.
Well, to answer that, thank you, and thank you for that answer. And I certainly do want to work with everybody and make sure that the city moves forward, because that's why I'm sitting here tonight. I would not be wasting my time here if I didn't think we could certainly move the city forward. But one of the things is perception's reality. I hate to be the Grinch, but when you close City Hall the day before Thanksgiving and the day after Thanksgiving, in the private sector, we have to take a vacation day. You take a vacation. If you want to do that, you take a vacation day. That's not a bad thing. Or you go to a skeleton crew. So what happens when that closes, now you got the Department of Public Works, you got the Hoyoke Housing Authority. They don't close. They go up to time and a half. So now you're getting people that are getting paid for not doing their job. I mean, what they're going to have to do is come back and do their jobs because the work has to get done. Then you're getting other departments that are getting time and a half. Then you're getting some departments like the gas and electric who aren't getting time and a half. And so now you're creating a bunch of hostility and people out there that just aren't happy. Then, I get this person came up to me at aisle 8. I was going to get my eggnog at Stop and Shop. I was going down. And she says, I hear that we bought a Christmas tree on a credit card. So that's news to me. She goes, how could that be news to you? I go, because I haven't heard that. I go, is that true? How do you know this? So I have no idea. And so I think, and we texted a little bit earlier today about communication, and I think there's a lack of communication. When Mayor Sullivan was here, there's tons of communications. For instance, the Attorney General is in town today, okay? I'm sorry, no, the Lieutenant Governor, rather. I didn't know about it. I don't know if you guys knew about it. I know Councilor LeBron knew about it, our former Councilor Vega. I had filed an order that anytime there's any sort of press conferences or any sort of that, City Council gets a simple email. It's one of those things you just put Kevin Jourdain, Tom McGee, boom, send. It's easy enough, I think, right? We don't get notified about that. So the communication, I think, is suffering, and I think we're seeing this here tonight when it comes down to what's really important, the money. That's all I have to say. Thank you.
Okay, before I recognize Councilor Sullivan, Councilor Bacon. And then after Sullivan will be LeBron Martinez.
Thank you, Mr. President. Since we have been discussing revenue as well as expenses, we've been given information that the contracts are completed on both the water company side and the DPW side to begin the shutoffs of water relative to unpaid sewer. So my question through the President to you, Mr. Mayor, is when will that be implemented? We understand each body has voted on the contract. I have an order out there. We understand it's with legal. When is it going to start? It would go a long way to addressing this matter. Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, from the minute that this was proposed by the council, I've been in support of it. And unfortunately, the Water Commission didn't vote for it until last week. And so, The Water Commission voted for it, approved it last week, and so now the administration can work to implement it as soon as possible. But we can only do that if the Water Commission is voting for it and they finally voted for it.
Do you have a date on that?
I don't know the exact date.
Thank you.
You made news tonight, Mayor. Thank you for telling us. I didn't
Yeah,
know that.
I
Thank
didn't.
you.
I thought it was already
Council
last
Sullivan.
month.
Yeah, is the assessor available to answer some questions?
I do not see him or her.
I'm sorry, not, the auditor.
Auditor not in the room.
Okay, so we have something of this magnitude and no auditor to ask questions of. I can remember going through this last year and Bellamy was here and available to ask questions. Because I think some of the things I brought up earlier, if the auditor was here to answer these questions, it might move us a lot forward off a second base here.
No, he was at the last two meetings, but obviously not here tonight.
I find that pretty disappointing.
Councilor LeBron Martinez.
Yeah, I just want to make a clarification that I was here today. I was not invited by the mayor. I was invited by Wayfinders directly. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
That's it. It's in my ward.
Oh,
Thank
good.
you.
Oh, good. All right. So, thank you, Mayor. Councilor Graney.
The Christmas tree out there was purchased on a credit card?
I don't know, do you want to address that?
That's what I heard. I didn't say that to be true.
All right. Okay. Is that a question to the mayor? Or?
Yes,
right.
That's the first I've heard of that.
Yeah, it was $5,000 from the Parks and Rec Department budget and $5,000 from the supplies on the Department of Public Works. And the company that the city ordered it from only accepted debit or credit cards, and so the money was sent to the treasurer's office in those two departments it was allocated for, and that's how we made the purchase.
It's a lot of overtime.
Okay.
Wait, can we vote on this?
We're getting there. Yeah, I believe the discussion portion has now, we thank the mayor for coming, and we're now at passing of the first reading. If there's no further discussion, all in favor of passing the first reading?
Aye.
Opposed? So moved. Is there a
Motion to pass the second reading.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded to pass the second reading. Any further discussion? Councilor Lisi.
We took up 18 and 20 as a package, so we're separating them out for the votes now.
Yes, just to refresh your memory, I said 18 we were going to vote first sequentially, and then we'll vote on 20 next.
Thank you.
Yep, so this vote will be just on 18. Okay, hearing no further discussion, the clerk will call the roll. A yes vote is in favor of a transfer of approximately $350,000 from various budget cuts and a reduction from the stabilization fund of $763,381 over to the tax levy of $1,101,328 in total. A yes vote is to approve that transfer. A no vote is to deny that transfer. The clerk will call the roll.
Lisi,
Yes.
Lopez,
No.
McGee,
No.
McGivern,
Yes.
Roman,
No.
Sullivan,
No.
Tallman,
Yes.
Bacon,
No.
Valentine,
Yes.
Bartley.
No.
Bresnahan. Graney.
No.
Jordan.
No.
Leahy.
No.
LeBron Martinez.
Yes.
5 yeas, 10 nays.
Boy, that sounds awfully familiar to Tuesday. 5 yes, 10 no, and same vote, same result, and that's item 18. We now have item 20, which is to take all of the money out of the stabilization fund with no budget cuts. Is there a motion to pass the first reading?
Motion to pass the first reading.
Is there a second? Motion's been made and seconded to pass the first reading. Not hearing any discussion. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? So moved. Motion to pass the second reading from
Motion
someone?
to pass the second reading.
Is there a second?
Second.
Second. Motion's been made and seconded to pass the second reading. Under discussion, Councilor Bartley.
Thank you. I'll just be very brief. I really appreciate what Councilor McGivern's comments. I thought they were just really excellent. And I take no joy in this vote, Mr. President, no joy in the last vote. I will say this for record, if I'm not leaving town, I'm willing to come back next week. I don't want to have TANs. I lost the treasurer. Okay, well, I guess there's that. But I take no joy in this at all. I will come back next week if you call a special meeting, if we can get something of a budget cut that's somewhere south of a $300,000 stabilization, somewhere to where we thought we were, which I'm glad, Mr. President, you brought up that canard that was put before us relative to the parking fees, which turns out to be nothing but a sham, total fake. We fell for it because we want to work with. We're here to help. We're nice people.
We work with people, yes.
But that's so. I implore the financial team. That's Josh. That's everybody else to come back with something that we can support, because obviously this is going nowhere tonight. Thank you.
And it should be noted that the retirement proposal, albeit people in the Attorney General's office and PERAC felt it was illegal, despite whatever our personal opinions were. They have a pretty insurmountable opinion. The point of that whole transaction was that it was going to be a budget reduction. And I think a budget reduction, albeit temporary, would be much more palatable until a free cash is certified. And once that free cash is certified, if people want to run along and spend all the money after that, then more power to them. But I think what you're hearing is what was heard Tuesday, which was what was heard the week before that. So we're starting to become a rerun movie here, but we'll keep saying it, I guess, until people believe us. Before I recognize Councilor Sullivan, Councilor Lisi had her hand up, and so I want to recognize Councilor Lisi.
Thank you. It's my understanding that we need to take action if we want to send out these third quarter bills on time by this evening. Tomorrow is when the bills need to be created and sent out to actually make it to our taxpayers' homes on time.
Well, maybe we'll have a special meeting on Thursday or something. I don't know. When's the next opportunity?
Well, I think what I would like to do then is suspend the necessary rules and have, it seems Rory or the mayor are here still, speak to the date, because I was under my understanding action needed to be taken tonight in order for those third quarter bills to be sent out tomorrow.
Okay.
Christmas Eve 3 years ago.
No, that was a different timeline.
All right.
We suspend the rules.
No, we're already under rule suspension. Yeah. So, Mayor, do you want to address the drop dead date to get out the bills? Or Councilor Lisi had a question asking.
And I have another question following that.
Okay.
Well, my understanding was that the bills will need to be printed this Thursday.
Okay. All right.
Okay. And then following up on that, when Councilor McGivern was speaking, he said that what I heard him say is that the retirement board and PERAC may have overreacted and misstated their understanding of what our action was going to be. And so therefore, I would love to hear if there's any updates, because it seems there is a lot of confusion about what the PERAC letter actually said and indicated to the city council. It seems that some folks have been able to have conversations with the retirement board, and there's some clarity there. So I think it would be beneficial for the entire council to hear any news.
Yeah, well, thanks for asking that, and I want to thank Councilor McGivern for his clarification as well. And I thought it was a pretty bold letter from PERAC, given that the city has full right to make a budget reduction if we so choose in that line item. And we thought, similar to using stabilization, it's different in that it's a budget reduction, but it was also a simpler request. One transfer, we can put it back in with free cash. And so, we disagree. I agree with the councilors that, that's why we considered doing it in the first place. And we consulted with multiple members of the retirement board, in addition to the executive director of the retirement board, to do that. But if we're on a time crunch here, and the message to me is to come back and with other transfers, I'm not sure exactly what that looks like, if it's another retirement transfer or something else. I thought we had a good compromise tonight, but it doesn't appear that there's any support for a compromise. So, at this rate, we'll have to pursue other options.
So I just want to ask if there's any. So there's an interpretation of the PERAC letter, and then what I hear you saying is that you and several retirement board members disagree with an interpretation of that letter.
Well, we don't need their
But has
approval either.
anyone consulted with PERAC to talk and explain to them what we are doing, to ask them to clarify then their position?
I haven't personally. But again, I think PERAC is being PERAC. I know the retirement board has Bellamy, who's a member of the retirement board, has communicated with them. The city and the city officials have the right to do that. It's one of our line items. Not that we would ever have a day in court, but we would certainly be justified in making a decision.
Okay, thank you.
So if we ever get to a point where Mr. Connerton revises his letter, or someone from the AG's office that he said he was in consultation with that was going to issue an injunction against the city, and that what that would make for great theater, Paul in defending Holyoke against an injunction from the AG's office with the other party being PERAC, that would make for great theater. But if there's a revision to the legal position that supports your position, then by all means, please give us that letter. And based on, before that letter arrived, there were some of us that did vote your position, but we had to revise our position in light of the letter. So,
even so, there weren't enough votes, though, I don't think.
Correct. There was 8. There was never 10, but you at least got 8.
We'll be in the same position we're in right now if we still have 8.
Potentially, yeah. I think your next best move, not that I'm in the advice giving business, but if you want my free unsolicited advice, I would come in with other budget appropriations and then maybe a minuscule stabilization if you absolutely get in a jam. But you'd have to come pretty quick with that, because your timeline is eroding on you. Councilor Sullivan, I thought you had a point you wanted to share.
I wanted to support Councilor Bartley's position and encourage the rest of the council. If the mayor and his team can come with something at no matter what hour and how short a notice, if it was your pleasure to call a special meeting, I'd drop what I was doing and get in here for it.
We're flexible people here. We do our best.
Is there a special meeting already scheduled on Thursday?
There is, which will probably be alleviated at this point if we take those 2 veto overrides up momentarily. I don't think we were going to need that meeting, but if you want to call one for something, or if can we amend that agenda, maybe we could do that. Yeah, maybe if we
48 hours, yeah.
I don't know if so we may not be able to do it at this point anyway, so we might be.
There's no late file orders at a special meeting. We cannot do it.
Yeah. So, all right.
Well, I'll be in touch.
All right, thanks a lot. Okay, so there we have it. That's first reading. I think we've gotten all our questions in. All in favor of passing the first reading?
Aye.
Opposed, so moved. Motion's been made. Is there a second? Second to pass the second reading. The clerk will call a roll. A yes vote is in favor of adopting item 20, which is to remove $1.1 million and change from the stabilization fund. A no vote is to deny that. Clerk will call the roll.
Lisi?
Yes.
Lopez? McGee? No. McGivern?
Yes.
Roman?
No.
Sullivan?
No.
Tallman?
Yes.
Bacon?
No.
Valentine?
Yes.
Bartley?
No.
Bresnahan?
Nope.
Graney?
No.
Jordan?
No.
Leahy?
No.
LeBron Martinez?
Yes.
5 yeas, 10 nays.
By your vote, you have dispensed with item 20. And that now brings us back. I was going to request that we suspend the rules to now consider 2 items that came in Friday afternoon, which were 2 vetoes made by the mayor, which are marked late file A and B on our agenda. First one up is relative to the new marijuana ordinance that we passed. I'd like to have a motion to suspend the rules, to suspend specifically Rule 44, take these items up now, and to entertain and take final action this evening. Is there a motion to do that?
Motion to suspend the rules.
Second.
Take up.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? So moved. Okay, we'll start with the first one up. Veto agenda item. The mayor, in the letter that he communicated to us, gave his reasons to veto our newly created marijuana ordinance, which was adopted at the last city council meeting. Okay. Is there a motion to override the veto?
What's the vote on that?
The vote was unanimous at the last meeting of everyone that was here. Yep. So is there a motion to override the veto?
Motion override.
Okay, is there a second?
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded to override the veto. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, the clerk will call the roll. A yes vote is to override the mayor's veto and pass this law notwithstanding the mayor's objection. That's the yes vote. A no vote is to sustain the mayor's veto and this not become law. Clerk will call the roll.
Lisi? Lopez?
Yes.
McGee? Yes. McGivern?
Yes.
Roman?
No.
Sullivan?
Yes.
Tallman?
Yes.
Bacon?
Yes.
Valentine?
Yes.
Bartley?
Yes.
Bresnahan?
Yes.
Graney?
Yes.
Jordan?
Yes.
Leahy?
Yes.
LeBron Martinez?
Yes.
14 yeas, 1 nay.
By your vote, you've overridden the mayor's veto. Item number 2 is adoption of the new ethics ordinance that we had adopted at the last city council meeting by a vote, I'm going to say, of about 10-3 or something prior, 10-2 at the last city council meeting. The mayor vetoed that item, and now there would be an order to have a motion to override the mayor's veto. Is there a motion to do that?
Second.
Okay, motion's been made and seconded to override the mayor's veto. Any discussion? Yes, Councilor LeBron.
Can you explain, I'm sorry, can you explain it again?
Yeah, so we passed the new ethics ordinance at the last city council meeting. The mayor has vetoed that new ordinance change, and now the city council would have to have an override of that veto for it to take effect. A yes vote will be to adopt, that is to override the mayor's veto and adopt the new law. A no vote would be to deny it. Yes, Councilor Valentin.
Thank you. As one of the 2 votes that night, I will be voting no. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councilor Valentin.
And just, again, to be clear, the reason I'm not in favor of this is because I think it's overreaching, and we had that whole discussion that night, but just...
And you were very eloquent when you said that.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that.
Of course.
We try. I'm staying with the same position. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilor McGivern.
I think I know where my vote is, Mr. President, but does the mayor have reasons for the veto?
He sent out a letter the other day. He feels that, most of this is covered by state law and that type of thing, and, it's duplicative, and those are basically the thrust of his things. Councilor Bacon?
Thank you, Mr. President. I would just note in the reading of the mayor's veto letter, it seemed that he did not recognize that we had removed the portion of the ordinance where it talked about businesses having business before the council.
Yeah, that section was deleted.
Right. It did not seem, by the way that he wrote his veto letter, that he was aware that that section had been deleted. Thank you.
Okay.
I'm sorry, point of order.
Sure.
The veto that's before me on the agenda is the veto of the notification system ordinance.
No, we're doing the late file sections. We suspended it to take up these items in final action this evening. We had a rule suspension to suspend Rule 44.
The late files.
Yep. That was A and B. The first one was marijuana. Second one is the ethics. And then there's 2 more vetoes that are in the communication section. So there's actually 4 vetoes this evening.
I'm going to motion to put the vetoes on the table. I can't see them. And I don't see
They were emailed out by the clerk.
I'm looking through it, and then I'm only looking for the first time now for these late filed orders and vetoes, so I'm sorry. Motion on the table. Motion to table.
Okay, is there a second to motion to table the override vote?
Second.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? No. So moved. That it is not tabled. So, there's been a motion that's been made and seconded to override the mayor's veto. Without further discussion, the clerk will call the roll.
What late file is this?
B. Clerk will call the roll. A yes vote is to override the mayor's veto and pass the law notwithstanding the mayor's objection. A no vote is to sustain the mayor's veto and that this not become law. Clerk will call the roll, please.
Lisi?
No.
Lopez?
Yes.
McGee? Yes. McGivern?
Yes.
Roman?
No.
Sullivan?
Yes.
Tallman?
Yes.
Bacon?
Yes.
Valentine?
No.
Bartley?
Yes.
Bresnahan?
Yes.
Graney?
Yes.
Jordan?
Yes.
Leahy?
Yes.
LeBron Martinez?
No.
11 yeas, 4 nays.
By your vote, you've overridden the mayor's veto, and that is now law.
It was still better than the 2.
That's right.
Yeah, there you go.
Well, we have a full room now.
Progress.
Progress.
All right.
There you go.
Same result.
progress is in the eye of the beholder, as we know, right? Yes. So without further ado, we have we're now back to regular order, counselors, unless there's any other rules, suspensions to take up items otherwise. And that is, we have 2 items currently laid on the table.
Motion to take up item number 1 and 2 off the table?
Second.
As a package?
Yes.
Okay. Motion's been made and seconded to take up items 1 and 2 off the table as a package. These are related to Valley Arena. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? So moved. All right, let me just refresh everybody's memories on these. Let's see, where do we begin? Item number 1 is the Committee on Finance, to whom is referred an order that the sum of $100,000 is appropriated to pay the cost of the rehab and construction of Valley Arena Park in South Holyoke, including lighting, planting, landscaping, stormwater management, the payment of all costs incidental and related thereto, and that to meet this appropriation, the treasurer, with the approval of the mayor, is authorized to borrow said amount under Chapter 44, Section 7, subsection 1 of the general laws, or pursuant to any other enabling authority, and to issue bonds and notes of the city. Therefore, that the mayor is authorized to contract for and expend any state aid available for the project, and that the mayor is authorized to take any other necessary action to carry out this project. The Finance Committee had recommended approval. That was Councilors McGee, Tallman, Leahy, and Vacan. Item number 2 is a grant authorization under Chapter 44, Section 53A, that the City Council hereby accept the provisions of the park grant for Valley Arena Park Grant and authorizes the establishment of a fund or any other method appropriate for the accounting of the receipts and expenditures of all resources associated with the administration of said grant. Have considered the same, recommend that the order be adopted. Councilors McGee, Tallman, Leahy, and Vacan. And
Make a motion to receive, adopt, pass first reading.
Second.
okay, motion's been made and seconded to receive and adopt, to pass the first reading on both. Under discussion, I'm going to recognize the chair, and then I'm going to go to Councilor McGivern. Councilor McGee.
Yeah, we approved it in finance, but there was a question when we got to the full city council meeting with regards to some items still in the ground, and one of the councilors wanted to reach out to Marcos to get information on that. I know emails have gone back and forth with regards to that issue, so therefore we laid it on the table to get more information, and now we are back. I know there is a time frame for this in order to get this up and running, so it was ordered to table for now so that we could take it up tonight and then do something with it in order to meet the time frame. So that's where we are from the last meeting.
Thank you, sir. Councilor
Thank you,
McGivern.
Mr. President. In view of the fact that we do not have a balanced budget, I will not vote for any appropriations that will cause cost or expense to the city this evening.
Okay. Councilor Roman, did you have an opinion on this?
Yeah,
or?
but-
Oh, I'm sorry. Councilor Sullivan.
Well, being the one that raised the question of what was in the ground there, we had a good meeting with everybody present, DPW, the environmental consultant, Marcos. And there's definitely an issue there. It appears it is being addressed through DEP. The thing I am still skeptical of is what the final price will be. I think as they get into this, they're going to find their remediation of the site is going to cost a lot more. As we get into it, the problem with closing any park, there's a whole bunch of restrictions on what has to be done in regards to replacing a new park and exactly how it has to be done. Even with a vacant lot across the street, we couldn't even move the thing across the street without it costing us even more than what we might get into with remediation. So as far as the health and safety concern, as far as I'm concerned now, that's in the hands of the DEP and the EPA, and I hope they do a good job of it.
Councilor Roman.
Yes, and I want to thank my colleague, Councilor Sullivan. I wasn't at the last meeting, but I attended the meeting with him, and just hearing his knowledge and asking the questions and even, talking about federal regulations. It was a really good meeting with Marcos and everything, and I want to make it clear to my colleagues, Marcos' team, the, individual who's there giving us the feedback
everyone made it clear from every department, if there was anything in the soil at any point in this process, they're going to abandon trying to move forward with that park if there's any red flags that come up throughout the way. And I, as the ward councilor, will be the first one to say, no, our kids can't play there. As you all know in this body, this came from the constituents of Ward 2, mostly Morgan School, the 7th and 8th grade. The last 2 years have been petitioning. I submitted to this body letters from 78 students who are now at Holyoke High School. They're still following along our progress, so they look to hearing back from us all. And with regards to my colleagues who have made statements around not spending money, we've already taken out bonds for other parks and tennis courts and stuff throughout this whole year. I don't think that this park should be left behind with that sentiment tonight. We've bonded for other tennis courts, no issues, no problems. I think that this park, specifically with the significance of its history of being Ballerina, I think we need to call it Rocky Marciano Way or something down there on the other side of Roberto Clemente. It'll be really cool to have 2 parallel streets with 2 different awesome names of amazing sports stars. So I really would encourage my colleagues to pass this tonight. Again, Councilor Sullivan and I both made a commitment to really watch the progress with regards to that contamination. We were both all concerned with that. But the city did a really good job, and Marcos and his team, this is time sensitive, so they only have till the 31st. We only have till the end of this calendar year to vote to accept these provisions. If not, it kind of goes away. And DEP has been there. They've taken a tour of the site. And I can provide with you the HG&E study because there used to be an HG&E gas tank on top of the facility. And at about 2005, I have those studies when HG&E did some basic level, and my colleague, Councilor Sullivan, did a great job of saying, well, they didn't actually check for this, but they checked for other contaminants in the soil. So they started that process. DEP is going in a very in-depth process. So I think it's really good. Either way, we have to do something because as in our meeting, this park isn't closed. It's not like kids aren't in that park playing right now. So we have a responsibility to those constituents. So when you're talking about, and my colleague said it best in the room, if there is contaminants of even, let's say, asbestos, it's not going to show for 20, 30 years. A lot of you folks, with all due respect, will be gone, and it's going to be our future generations who are going to have to deal with that. My colleague said it. I didn't say it. I'm just quoting him, okay, from that meeting. I don't want you all to get offended. He said it. He said it. I did it.
That's an all due respect if I ever heard it.
With all due respect, that's what my colleague said. I'm quoting him from the meeting. But we made a commitment in that room to follow that process to ensure that there are no contaminants, but there are kids currently playing in that field. I think we owe them our justice and really some due diligence to start working on this project. Thank you.
Councilor Sullivan, who we also hope will be here in 20 to 30 years.
Just to correct my colleague here and to straighten anything out and how vehemently I would be objecting to anything named Rocky Marciano Way. The fellow who first fought Rocky Marciano there was a Holyoke native named Les Epperson, who I believe may be 95 years old and still residing on Pine Street in Holyoke. And that was the first person to lose a pro fight to Rocky Marciano.
Rocky Marciano was Rocky Mack at that time, too, I believe.
Oh, is that
Correct.
right?
Correct.
You might have fought him when you were back in the Marines, right?
I was a lightweight, like I still am.
Oh, boy. Wow. This is really going.
Oh, God, that's great. Okay, so I'm glad. Looks like we have the art of compromise here, and point well taken about what's in the ground, and we're going to move forward, but monitor. Make sure our kids aren't playing on any hazardous waste, okay? So that's good to know. All right, and so we're still at first reading. Any other thoughts? Or we're okay. So all in favor of passing the first reading on both items?
Aye.
Opposed?
No.
So moved.
Pass the second reading.
Second. Motion's been made and seconded to pass the second reading. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, the clerk will call the roll. A yes vote is on the adoption of both items 1 and 2 on the agenda that formerly were on the table and now before us. A no vote is to deny both.
Lisi?
Yes.
Lopez?
Yes.
McGee?
Yes.
McGivern?
No.
Roman?
Yes.
Sullivan?
Yes.
Tallman?
Yes.
Bacon?
Yes.
Valentine?
Yes.
Bartley?
Yes.
Bresnahan?
Yes.
Graney? Jordan?
Yes.
Leahy? LeBron Martinez?
Yes.
11 yeas, 1 nay.
By your vote, you've approved both of those items. We already took care of public comment, which now brings us to item
14.
14, weren't there?
14, yeah, sorry.
14 to 1.
That's my bad
Yep.
tonight.
So public comment now being resolved, we're up to communication number 3, which is a veto of an item. If you'd be so kind as to give me this. Thank you.
We did that one, no?
Item number 3 is a communication from the mayor. It's a veto of agenda item number 201 received and adopted on November 21st. The mayor is objecting to our adoption of Massachusetts General Law
Chapter
272, subsection 66. Correct?
No, that was,
Oh, he doesn't reference the actual law that we adopted here.
right, that was
It's the adoption of the state law relative to.
Chapter 85, Section 17A.
Right.
Can you read that again to me?
Wow, if I remember that. Chapter 85, Section 17A.
Okay. I'll have to refresh my memory on these state law adoptions. Crystal, does it need the mayor's approval? Or can we override that? We codified this one as an ordinance. Okay, then it can be vetoed, then it can be overridden. All right, very good. So, is there a motion to override the mayor? This, if you recall, adoption of Massachusetts General Law, Chapter 85, Section 17A, was about the additional enforcement mechanisms relative to people soliciting in the streets.
Motion to override.
Okay, is there a second?
Second.
Second. Any discussion? Hearing none, the clerk will call the roll. A yes vote is to override the mayor's veto and adopt the ordinance change. A no vote is to not do that.
Lisi?
No.
Lopez?
Yes.
McGee?
Yes.
McGivern?
Yes.
Roman? Yes. Sullivan?
Yes.
Tallman?
Yes.
Bacon?
Yes.
Valentine?
No.
Bartley?
Yes.
Bresnahan?
Yes.
Graney?
Yes.
Jordan?
Yes.
Leahy? LeBron Martinez?
No.
12 yeas, 3 nays.
By your vote, you have overridden the mayor's veto on item number 3. Communication number 4, fourth veto of the evening from the mayor. Mayor gives us a communication marked number 4 on the agenda, veto of the notification system ordinance. As you'll recall, the city council adopted an ordinance recently that stated that non-elected officials are to make the announcements on the citywide notification system, and that was the nature of the ordinance change. The mayor opposes that, and he has therefore vetoed it. Is there a motion to override the veto?
So moved.
Okay, is there a second? Motion's been made and seconded to override the veto. Any discussion? Hearing none, the clerk will call the roll. A yes vote is to override the mayor's veto and adopt this law. A no vote is to not do that.
Lisi?
No.
Lopez?
Yes.
McGee?
Yes.
McGivern?
No.
Roman?
Yes.
Sullivan?
Yes.
Tallman?
Yes.
Bacon?
Yes.
Valentine?
No.
Bartley?
Yes.
Bresnahan?
Yes.
Graney?
Yes.
Jordan?
Yes.
Leahy? LeBron Martinez?
No.
11 yeas, 4 nays.
By your vote, you've overridden the mayor's veto.
Tough night.
Item number 5. Item number 5 is the minutes of our December 5th meeting from our esteemed city clerk.
Motion to receive and adopt.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded to receive and adopt the minutes of December 5th. Any discussion? Counselor McGivern.
I would just ask everybody to turn to the page 15 of the minutes.
Okay.
And please note that we adjourned at 12:33 p.m. and
Think that
truly
might have been a
attested by
typo?
our city clerk. Truly attested by our city clerk. We're off by a minute. It's a true record, and it will not be broken this evening.
Agreed.
Let's hope not.
AM.
Not if we have anything to do with it. That was a dandy of a meeting. But that's what happens when you only had one in November. Okay. All in favor of adopting the minutes?
Aye.
Opposed? So moved. Item number 6 is the communication we received from the tax collector. That was
Mr.
alluded
President,
to
can
earlier.
we suspend the rules and take 6, 8, and 9, and 10 as a package?
Second.
Just receive them.
Yeah, motion's been made and seconded to suspend the rules, take 6, 8, 9, and 10 as a package, and to receive all of them.
Second.
All in favor of that rule suspension?
Aye.
Opposed? So moved. Let me just read those briefly. Item number 6, from the tax collector, Catherine Jakowski, expressing her concerns on the tax rate issue. Item number 8 is a letter from PARAC, which I alluded to earlier, which is the appropriation for FY 2019, FY 2019 and future years. I take a read of that and look at as it's going bigger each year. Just thought I'd point that out. Item number 9 is a communication from Cinder McNerney, which was alluded to earlier, regarding use of stabilization money. And then item number 10 is from the Park and Rec Commission. It's their minutes of October 26th. There was a motion to receive all of these items. Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? Hearing none. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? So moved. All those items received. We already took care of item number 7, which now brings us to my favorite part of the whole meeting.
Mr. President, if I could, a point of personal privilege.
Yes,
from
Councilman.
the senior person of the Holyoke City Council. I would ask your permission and the body to suspend the rules to allow me to approach the podium.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded to suspend the rules to allow Councilor McGivern to approach the podium this evening. All in favor of that?
Aye.
Opposed? So moved.
You're not going to tackle him, are you? You need a bodyguard, Kevin?
Give us a few minutes.
Get Leahy up there. You got the 3 linebackers.
All yours.
If, Mr. President, if I could, with your permission and with the blessing of the City Council, as you know, this is the end of a term. And traditionally, as City Councilors, we spend a lot of time together. 2 weeks ago, we spent way too much time together. And traditionally, when City Councilors leave the City Council at the end of a term for different reasons, we tend to honor them at a private party, our own Christmas party, which we sponsor through our own funds, known as the Flower Fund, and give them a plaque. A number of the members of the Flower Fund and the City Council itself has asked to change that a little bit, and therefore suspension of rules to recognize your 24 years of service with the Holyoke City Council, and more important, I think, to recognize the last 6 years that you have spent up here at the podium. I know it's not an easy job. I know you worked at it diligently, and I know you've become our voice, and your hard work is an example of good leadership, and we certainly appreciate that. A former colleague of yours and mine, Kevin, Ray Fair, who sat on the council himself for some 20-something years, used to love to quote the former President Teddy Roosevelt. I will not go into Ray's quote, but I think it kind of sums up a good part of what your career has been about and what it means to, I think, to all of us, because it's certainly something that we recognize as people who put ourselves out in the limelight and put ourselves into the position of the fact that we need to be elected by the public, but we choose to ask for that vote, and we choose to come here to do debate, to do battle. Teddy Roosevelt said very quickly that credit belongs to those who are actually in the arena. And for 24 years, you have survived this arena very, very admirably, very diligently on behalf of your constituency, and as I said before, very diligently on behalf of all of us over the last 6 years. It's not to say we agree with them every time. It's not to say we're supposed to agree with them every time. But I think, and I hope I'm speaking for everybody, that I'm protecting you. We understand what the battle is all about. So what we're trying to say, Kevin, is we are going to have a Christmas party, and at that party, I'm already using the bait of what we're going to do for 2 other councilors who are leaving this evening, Councilor Graney and Councilor Lopez, that they've all but committed to come to the dinner with us. And I know Mrs. Graney will be there, and I'm sure we're going to arm twist Councilor Lopez to be there also. But tonight we wanted to do this properly and to do this in front of the entire body and in front of all your constituency. Now, we're not going to give up the names of people that worked very hard on them, but one of them is not a city councilor. And he knew that you would be taking this gavel with you, a gavel that is out of use. And he knew that a good company, Hoyoke Company, has 2 locations, one in Hoyoke and one in West Springfield, would be able to make a plaque that would fit your gavel for your doing of what you would be to remember all of us. On behalf of everybody, because I think you're going to talk for a long time, so I'm going to cut this short. On behalf of everybody, we interrupted the President's report on purpose, Councilor Bartley, correct? We'd like to present you with this plaque of our appreciation and thank you for everything you've done, not just for your constituency, but for the City Council itself. It is very, very well worded. Kevin A. Jourdain, a maker of law and a maker of history, the Hoyoke City Council President, 2012-2017, City Councilor, 1994-2017, and presented on this date, December 19th, to our President, Kevin Jourdain. Thank you.
Thank you. You guys are great. I love you guys to pieces. You guys are awesome.
I would like to make a motion to give you 1 minute.
I don't recognize the
Well, Kevin, before you give your final remarks, can you allow other councilors to, maybe give you some props here? Because at this time, I do want to recognize, if I could, through the chair, recognize all 3 of you. This will be my last time to do so publicly. And, I just want to say I look over to Mr. and Mrs. Graney sitting to my right, and I grew up with their son, Mikey G, one of my closest friends growing up, and I used to see how of a father that Mr. Graney was to him, and not only to him, but his other children as well, and always wanting him and the other kids to treat everybody with respect the way that he was brought up, and he did. And what a class act father and mother they were and are. And obviously that has been brought into the City Council chambers as well. And so losing you tonight is a huge loss, I think, because it's an independent voice. It's a voice that's needed. It's a voice that in January will certainly be needed. We need independence that's not connected to anything. And you certainly, sir, had that, and you should be commended for it. And I'm going to miss you. As to my counselor to my left, I had the pleasure of sitting here with you. I've known you for a long time, graduating from college. My first job out of college was at West Mass Elder Care, and you quickly told me I was doing everything wrong, and you quickly pointed out what I should be doing correctly. And I think that job there, speaking with all the elderly clients that we had, presented me with the opportunity of running for City Council, because I could see how we could help many people in this community, and it was one of the things that you did so well. You just got along with everybody, no matter their color, no matter their size, no matter their age, no matter what. You looked at people as people, and you looked at their needs, and you found a way to solve what problems they had. And so, quite frankly, sir, I think you're one of the best workers at West Mass Elder Care. And if it wasn't for you, I would have stumbled much sooner than I did. And it was a stumble, but we had some fun. And to you, Kevin, I'll be brief, but I've been following you. Altar Boy of the Year 1986, Altar Boy of the Year 98, or 88 rather. Became a city councilor, 40 under 40, 40 under 40. I didn't agree with everything that you had to say, and you didn't agree with everything I had to say. But we always had a very cordial working condition, and I always appreciated the fact that even if you knew what which way I was voting, you'd always give me the courtesy of a phone call, and you were always a class act and a gentleman. And
thank you.
I certainly, I think losing you on the council will be another detriment to the city, not only fiscally, but also just
a way of common sense, and you certainly never were afraid to speak up for what you thought was right, and it's going to be a huge loss. And I look forward to seeing all three of you back in some sort of commitment, in some sort of form, to do what I think all of us are doing in this room, is to helping the people of Holyoke. So thank you.
Great. Thank you so much, Jim. Thank you. And I have some thoughts I want to share. Many of them are very similar to what I shared back in February when I made the decision to not run for re-election. I just have these thoughts, and I just kind of want to get them out. And I know at the last one, somebody had, I think it was Councilor McGee, said, gee, you really should say that, because the night, just as fortunes have it, the camera wasn't working, the TV wasn't working that night, and it was sort of like the public didn't have really an opportunity to hear sort of my thoughts on me wrapping up. So I did have one sort of page of comments that I wanted to share, but I just want you each to know it's really an absolute pleasure to serve with each of you. You're all awesome people with tremendous backgrounds that contribute so much to this community. The citizens have chosen very well with each and every one of you. This isn't about who agrees with who. That's what democracy is supposed to be, a diversity of ideas, and somehow at the end of the rainbow we get to a decision and we move forward for better or for worse. But here's my final thoughts. After careful reflection upon this point in time in my life, I had presently come to a very personal and professional decision to announce that I would not be running this year for re-election to the City Council. I've really had the absolute pleasure to serve the people of Holyoke for the last 24 years, and in particular in the last 6 as the council president. Tremendous honor, just one of the great honors of my life. I've had such a lovely, wonderful life, and I'm looking forward to so much more ahead, but this has just been awesome. Awesome experience. I encourage anybody to take the opportunity to serve your community. I've given my entire adult life. I've actually been numerically on the City Council more years on the City Council than I have not been on the City Council in my life, to give you a sense of the amount of time. But my gift of time and my gift of passion to this body has been rewarded to me many times more than what I have ever singularly contributed. I'm so pleased to leave with the content and knowledge that the City Council, I feel, is so much stronger as an institution than when I first came here in January of 1994. I feel in many ways I've helped to restore the body to at least a co-equal branch of government, if not maybe perhaps collectively the strongest branch of the government of Holyoke, as I think it should be, and as I think the founding leaders of the community had intended. The stature and authority that we're given is not designed to serve us as individuals, but is designed vicariously to really serve the people of Holyoke. This is, we the 15, soon to be 13, are the people. You are the man and woman walking down High Street. You are their voice, and it is where that power should be. It is why this City Council is such an august and powerful organization, because all power flows from the people in this great country, as it should. To all the citizens who voted for me for so many years, I just want to thank them from the bottom of my heart. To give a 21-year-old kid who staked out a candidacy basically on a premise of, a voice to young people, to stay in the community, to be forward-thinking, to think about a future and give, in some way, make this community a better place so that they would want to stay here, because one of the things that's always concerned me is the flight of talent, the flight of life, out of the community. But so many have stayed, and I wanted to be, if anything else, a symbol of people that have staked a root here, have raised a family here, have contributed back, like all of you have, and that this can be a great model of success, and together we can build a great community. I want to thank Mayor Hamilton at the time, who was just instrumental, I think, in many ways to why I won at that time in 1993 election, and just told a lot of people, give the kid a chance. And I hope I've earned that give a kid a chance opportunity. I hope they don't have many regrets. Maybe a few do, but not too many. To Jack Willahan, whose name I bring here as his plaque back in this chamber, just one of the great characters, but also one of the great personalities of this chamber, one of the most passionate fighters for the people, like a Joe McGivern, like the other longtime veterans of this board. Him and guys like Gene Munier and Franny Rogers and Danny Knapp and Pete Stathis, George Neves, Marty Dunn, I mentioned Joe, Helen Norris, smart lady. You may not always agree with her, tremendously smart lady, pleasure to serve with. Elaine Pluta, just a class act. I want to thank her. She reached out to me earlier today. Pleasure to serve with her. Pat Higgins, longtime city councilor, wonderful guy. Every day is a bonus. Ray Fair was mentioned earlier. Real class act. Good guy, Ray Fair. Learned a lot from him. I learned a lot from Diosdado Lopez, longtime city councilor, great veteran of this board. Patty Devine as well. They all helped in some way to make me a better, stronger city councilor. I've made so many amazing friendships with everybody in this room, whether we agree or not on an issue. I think we've all become, on some level, we're in this common venture together, and we're down in the trenches working it together. We're really friends. We're comrades in arms. We really are, and we're doing some great things. But Jack was a guy, a Willahen, who I give a special tribute. Really took me under his wing in many ways. And I learned so much from Jack. He really was very special to me. We forged an amazingly close friendship. He was really like a second father to me. I miss him very much, even to this day. Really was the person who encouraged me to go to law school. He just said, Kevin, you've got a tremendous talent for this type of stuff. You should go become a lawyer. One of the best career moves I made. I would encourage anybody who's ever considering going to law school to become an attorney, go do that. It did marvels for my career and also just for me personally. It's wonderful. Him and I had some amazing 13-2 debates. It was the two of us battling it out, and everyone was probably said, "Well, you just two shut up." But some of that stuff that we said later came to fruition down the road. And I know Mike Plaisance, he had a front row seat for a lot of those as well. I believe a fair assessment of my service here, even from my toughest critic, would say that, I served honorably, I served for the people, that I worked hard. While there were votes that, in hindsight, I wish if I had the information that I had later, there were some that I wish I could take back. But to call it a regret, I really don't have any. And in the spirit of what Frank Sinatra would say, I did it my way and I have no regrets. I don't look back in that way, always forward. For the people of Holyoke, I believe I've left a body of work, of leadership on vitally important issues that they cared about: our new senior center, our new police station, new fire stations, new library, new parks, our senior tax work-off program, the Section 19 committee, the demolition delay ordinance, the creation of the stabilization fund, massive government reform agenda. We had a couple more of those tonight. All work that was able. Some of this stuff it took, even in just the last 5 years or so, 6 years, to come to fruition. Things that I thought, boy, we really should be doing this. What does that tell you as a legislator? Hang in there. It takes time. Stuff that you're thinking about today, you're working on today, you may not see that come into fruition until 10 years from now. Sometimes you have to make the case. And lead people. I would think, though, my crowning accomplishment, probably the thing I'm most proud about is, and I would hope that and I believe the public did because they voted with me on it, was the defeat of the 2011 charter change. I think that would have been disastrous for this community. I think it would have completely undermined the city council's power. I think it would have created an entirely different form of government with this uber strong mayor form of government. I believe I helped to lead the cause in opposition to that, and with the help of a lot of people in this room, we defeated that charter change in 2011, and I think we're the better for it. We've instituted certain components of it, like the 4-year term now since. I believe that as the fiscal watchdog of the city, I've really worked hard to fight for the people's interests, and even sometimes I was tenacious even, to have to put personalities aside to get to the cause of some of these deep fiscal issues and not be afraid to say things as they are, even though the convenient thing would have just been to say, yeah, let's just let it go. You can't do that, because if you don't stand as the vanguard for these things, there's nobody behind you. There isn't somebody else that's going to pick that up if you don't. And that's really one of my thoughts going forward for you. The privilege of being city council president for the last 6 years has been an amazing tenure. I couldn't be more thrilled to hear that Todd McGee will be taking up those reins in January. I couldn't think of a more thoughtful, prepared, intelligent, just good person than Todd McGee. I feel extremely comfortable with me leaving as president and knowing that he'll be in this rostrum come January 2nd. I think the city council is well suited to select Todd McGee as the next president of the city council. I wish him nothing but the best to succeed me in this position. Over my tenure here, I just want to say, Holyoke has this amazingly proud and awesome history that we're each being part of as makers of law and makers of history. We have to keep working at it. Making something doesn't mean you have success on the first time. It's going to be multiple tries. So my advice to the city council is keep working hard, keep being diligent, keep being the vanguard of the people. Protect this institution. Protect it. So many city councilors and aldermen before you have had to fight tenaciously to give you the power that you have. This board wouldn't be anything like it is today. You wouldn't have a fraction of the authority and power that you have in this council to wield it for the good of the people of Holyoke if it wasn't for those fights in years ago. Be very careful to allow that to succeed. There's always that executive overreach. Whether intentional or not, it's always there trying to say, keep the city council out of this, keep them out of that. We need smart, bold leadership. Don't be afraid to tackle the big issues. Always let common sense be your guide. Your gut never will steer you wrong. To my family, just my mom, my wife, my kids, they're just awesome. I am blessed with the most amazing family. I absolutely love them with the bottom of my heart. Thank you to each of them for allowing me to do this, to be away from that family time. I know come January I'm going to have some more of that type of time. I'm really the luckiest man on the face of the earth since Lou Gehrig. So I really feel that way. I see one of my dearest friends on earth here, Rich Berena. I want to thank guys like Rich, Dan Alley, Dave Rudzik. I mean, those were the crew that got me into office and to help get me elected. They've been my lifelong friends. I just love those guys to death. In conclusion, I just say that this institution has been such a part of me. It's been like, a symbiotic relationship almost. I'm going to miss it more than you'll know, but I think each of us, to grow as a person, we need some of that healthy change and to move on now in life to new challenges. I still want to, continue to serve my city, just like you're serving the city in some new capacity. I'm sure there'll be something for me down the road as another way to help Holyoke. And I want to say, I just think you guys are a great group. I think you're going to have an amazing next term and beyond. And if I can be of any way helpful to you, I just want you to know I'm here for you in any way. And if there's some way that I can be of service to you, please let me know. I'm not just a phone call away. And on that regard, I would just like to say for one last time, God bless America. God bless the city of Holyoke, and God bless the city council. All the best. Thank you for this very privilege to the people of Holyoke to allow me to serve. Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you. Yes. Councilor Valentin.
Since Councilor McGivern looked at me when he was giving you the plaque saying we don't always agree. I want to say that I wish you the best. I hope that with this change in your schedule and your lifestyle, that hopefully, you can look at new priorities in your life, like your family or whatever is most important to you, because I know that when we are in this room and we're doing this work, sometimes that's what we kind of let slip, not really on purpose, but because there's not enough hours in the day. So I do hope that, whatever's next for you is positive, is a good, a good experience and a good chapter. And, there's no secret that you and I are pretty opposite on many things. Trump delegate, Sanders delegate. I mean, I don't really need more evidence than that. But in all seriousness, when I started here as a new counselor, and I think there were 3 of us at that moment, you took the time to train us at Open Square that Saturday morning for about 4 hours. And the reality is that, it was your way to show us the ropes. And so I wanted to publicly thank you for that, because, this is one of those experiences where you're basically thrown in to the sharks and you just sink or swim and you figure it out on the way. So I do want to, thank you for the fact that obviously your attention to detail and your very obvious dedication to the city for so many years, was obviously part of that moment. So again, just wanted to say that even though we don't see, things in the same lens, probably most of the time, there were times where we voted together.
We have.
And my hope is that, when you walked in here 24 years ago, this council didn't look this way. And so I hope that the experiences that you've had in the 24 years here with, the changes of the makeup of this council in terms of diversity, in terms of, women, in terms of age, in terms of all these, labels that we can talk about, that hopefully what I would wish that you can take from your experience with me, for example, is that perhaps conversations that we had here, either here or offline, helped you see things in a different way that, can be part of your next chapter. So when you talked about, giving the kid a chance, maybe that's part of, your next chapter, who knows. But I just wanted to say that publicly and hope that the experience you've had here and the changes you've seen throughout the years can be part of your next chapter as well.
It's a great point, and thank you so much for those very thoughtful remarks. And ironically, believe it or not, we actually used to have 6 women on the city council.
Yeah.
So I don't know, are we progressing or regressing? I'm not sure, but your point is well taken, and certainly more Latinos on the city council, which is more reflective of the community, which I think is a strength. This diversity that's on the board and is more representative of the people, I think, is fantastic. And just moreover, to your larger point, which is, absolutely, I take in information from everybody and I try to get to, question, do I have this right? Or is there another way to look at this, or look at this from another perspective? Each of us should be open-minded enough to do that. And I think it's through that dialogue, that diversity, that we're able to get to really good conclusions. I absolutely agree with you. And the fact that we both end up at the same spot, that's not the point. The point is that we're listening and we're having a dialogue, and we're making progress, because the next time around we might say, you know what, we did it my way this time, but next time we're going to do it your way, because this way didn't work. And absolutely. And I'm looking forward to the next chapter, no question about it. I think I think it's going to be an exciting next act, and I'm looking forward to the future. And thank you so much for being part of this and being such a good colleague. And I know how hard you work for the people of Ward 4 in the city overall. And I appreciate hard work. I really do. And I have a lot of respect for you. All right, Councilor Tallman.
I just want to say a few words, because I'd be remiss not to say anything about our career together. I left here, I served one term, and you came in 93. I was here from 92 to 93. And I stepped out for about 7-8 years to be with my younger daughter, and I I came back and you were still here and still doing the job. Now you're leaving. It's like not too many people can say that, you've given a career to the city. And, as often we've had several conversations, some on the phone, some maybe up at Denny's or Friendly's over the years, and maybe over in Chicopee at the ice cream place with Jack a couple times.
Yeah, absolutely.
I've always respected you, respect the work you do, and I'll always remember that, talking a couple weeks ago about the art of compromise, willing to work with everybody in this board, willing to take something out of an ordinance to get a vote through. And as well as anybody here that at several occasions I've talked to you on the side and said you're doing a great job, and really respect you and the job you've done, and I wish you all the best, and especially time with your family, because that's what it's all about, spending time with your family. But the dedication you've given to the city really is amazing, and it's commendable, and I want to thank you as a citizen, not just a colleague, but as a citizen for all the work you've done for our community.
Thank you so much, Peter. I really appreciate it, and thank you. All of you are to be commended. You're all down here in the trenches plugging away, and you got a lot of experience here, and you guys are going to do great things. I'm confident of that. The best is yet to come for Holyoke. Councilor McGee.
Yes, thank you, Kevin. We'll have our goodbye for you at the Christmas party, so I'll be quick. Thank you for everything you've done for us. I'd like to hear from Councilor Lopez and Councilor Graney when he does come back, because that's what we normally do in this process.
Absolutely,
we're getting there. But as I said then, when the camera wasn't on, you had and deserved the right to talk to people at home and wish them well and thank them for your tenure. As I said then as well, is this is not goodbye. It's we'll see you again.
Right.
We all say that we're leaving, but Councilor Lopez, classic example. Councilor Tallman, classic. We come back.
You never know.
So there's always that opportunity. I'm not going to say goodbye because as you said, although Councilor Sullivan said we might not be here, you want to stay here another several years. So there's a chance that you will be back here.
You never know.
It's thank you, but there is also the possibility that we will see you again. So keep that phone up and running because we will be calling.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for everything.
Thank you. So as we need to note here, once again, one of the great legends of the City Council, Diosdado Lopez, one of the first, if not the first, Latino elected to a City Council / Board of Aldermen in the state of Massachusetts, and a man who needs no introduction, but his bona fides around Holyoke speak for themselves, and couldn't have more respect for this man, and is certainly a legend in this body. And I turn it over. Councilor Lopez, any thoughts you'd like to share about your farewell to arms?
Well, Kevin, thank you. I know you came after me 94. I was in 92. I started with Peter and Joe. Joe, you have been great to me. I do appreciate everything that you have done. Going back to even Mr. Shea, Jimmy Shea, even we had some disagreement, but at least he was there for me, being the only Latino on this board at the beginning. And it wasn't easy. The same thing with Evie Shesky. Evie was amazing. Meeting with Evie just to learn a little bit more of the City Council and going after you to make sure that I was doing my work. It was amazing. In 93, the City Council, we named Roberto Clemente Street. That was my second year here in the City Council. I started in 92. And then Carlos Vega Park and Susan Egan, that was great. And the redistricting of this city in 2000, I think that was an amazing task for me as the chair of the redevelopment committee. That wasn't an easy task. Everybody was so divided, and Bill Pliska and some of the other people that were here before helped me a lot. But I do appreciate it that you voted for me, whoever voted for me way back in May, to give me another chance in being a city councilor. Thank you. Thank you for everything.
Thank you. Thank you for everything. Tell him to come in. Should turn off the lights and have a spotlight come down as he enters the room.
If I may, Mr. President.
Yes, Councilor Lopez.
One of the things that I take from this city council, going back to Mr. Hamilton when he became mayor. I mean, in 95, 94, I was thinking, what the heck? I don't know if I'm going to stay here. I mean, with all the budget issue and all that, Bill was great with number, and he did a fantastic job for this city. I mean, we're lucky that Bill got in when my friend over there, Joe McGivern, ran for mayor. I hate to say that, but I mean, Bill was great with numbers.
Poor Joe.
Had to stay here, No, Bill was the best with numbers.
Yeah, no, he was amazing. I mean, but I mean, I met a lot of great people here, and I do recall a lot of.
It's really folks. A big part of us now. I mean, it's right here. And speaking of gentlemen that need no introduction, but we're going to do one anyways, I just want to say Howie served for many years on the Holyoke School Committee, and I got to know Mr. Graney then, not Howie, as English teacher at Holyoke High School for many years, and just a thoughtful, smart guy who cared about kids, is passionate about public education, took that passion, took that energy on behalf of the people of Holyoke to the school committee, in which was kind of a surprising election in a way, because he had to defeat an incumbent to get in that first time, and you did a great job, Howie, on the school committee, and the city council, the public rewarded you with that when you came out for city council to be elected, and we're just thrilled with your service, and you've done a great job here. And you're a great family man. You're also a guy who served his country in the United States Marine Corps, something that I, in particular, have tremendous respect for. And as I know myself, as someone who's gotten to know you, consider you a good friend, and you're going to be missed by this body. And we would love for you to share any thoughts you'd like about your service here, and we wish you the very best, Howie, for the future.
Well, thanks, Kevin. I thank everybody in the room. It's amazing the amount of intelligence that's sitting around these tables in this room. It's been a pleasure to be around for the last 4 years. I too would like to recognize Mr. Barren over there. He's a former student of mine, and years ago I worked.
Hopefully, A student.
They were all A students. And I worked for his mom and dad at Emily and Jenny's, as a matter of fact, years ago. And Emily is still doing well, which is great news.
That's awesome,
yeah. So I'd also like to recognize another Holyoke boy who's not here. And I'd appreciate it if the city council could recognize him too. Some weeks ago, a former student of mine at Holyoke High School, Mr. Barry O'Brien, was named as the second in command of the Massachusetts State Police. And I think that's a very high honor for a Holyoke High School graduate, who was also one of the valedictorians of that class at Holyoke High School. I believe it was in the early 80s. I'm not sure exactly when. So I'd love to see the council recognize him, maybe a letter of appreciation. A great Holyoke High School kid, a great Holyoke kid, a wonderful family, the O'Brien family. I believe it was Norwood Terrace that they grew up on. I still see his mom from time to time, Janet, who's doing well, and she's very proud of Barry, as we all should be. as a senior citizen, you know, I have some regrets leaving the council because I enjoyed being here, enjoyed representing the seniors in the city especially, and the disabled seniors, who there are many, and sometimes they go forgotten along with their business on a day-to-day basis, and we try to keep them in our thoughts and our prayers and the things that we do here on the council. I'd like to also thank the many citizens who voted for me over the years, especially the 3,654 who voted for me in the last election that did want to return me to the council. And I still see them on a day-to-day basis, and some of them are still disappointed, probably more so than that I'm not going to continue on the council. However, as you say, old soldiers never die, they just fade away. I do not intend to go anywhere. If I'm in good health, in a year from now, a year and a half from now, I will run again for a city council seat, because there is no way that I'm going to end on a note like that. And I am proud to serve the city of Holyoke, and I will once again try to do my best to do so. God willing, myself and Mrs. Graney, if we are in good enough health. Of course, I want to thank my kids and my grandkids, and especially my wife, who really changed my life for the better. My wife, Ellen, 48 years. We've had nothing but a wonderful time of it raising our kids, and we both love the city. We intend to be here for a while, and we do not intend to go away. So I thank everybody in the room for their comradeship. I shouldn't say comradeship, but I should say camaraderie. and I appreciate your input. I appreciate your debate. I appreciate your intelligence. And thank you very much. It's been an honor to serve.
Thank you so much. Our best of luck to you. All right.
They say in Star Wars, let's go to warp speed.
Will the president's report be the same come January? I don't know. We'll see. All right.
Be up by 8:30 for
All right. Everything is downhill from here, guys. So we start with reports of committees. And first up, as always, is the esteemed Ordinance Committee. Item number 11A is a report from the Committee on Ordinance, to whom is referred an order that the City of Holyoke consider a vote to accept the provisions of Mass General Law, Chapter 60, Section 3F, a law that would allow the city to designate a place on its property or motor vehicle excise tax bills, or mail with such bills a separate form whereby taxpayers may voluntarily check off, donate, and pledge an amount of money which shall increase the amount already due for the purposes of providing support for veterans and their dependents in need of assistance, or take any action relative thereto. The Ordinance Committee had considered this item and recommended it for adoption. It's signed off by Councilors Vacan, Jourdain, Bartley, and Lopez.
A motion to receive and adopt the committee report.
Second. Motion's been made and seconded to receive and adopt the committee report under discussion and to pass. Do we need to pass the first reading? Because I assume we're codifying it as a state law.
My understanding is that this is a simple adoption of
just
the
an
state
adoption.
law.
We're not codifying it in an ordinance. Okay. So on adoption of this particular state law to create this, under discussion, Councilor Vacan.
Thank you, Mr. President. So this was, I believe, filed by Councilor McGee and addressed by our Veteran Service Director. He came down and assured us that they would be able to send this out in a very low budget way, simply to give our residents the option, if they so choose, to specifically support veterans in our city. He did recommend, and it is coming from the committee, that this be made a part of the motor vehicle excise tax bills, not the property tax bills. So I do want to make that notation clear in terms of the vehicle. Otherwise, we had a very good discussion, and it's an option, and it's a voluntary matter. So we leave it to the discretion of our residents.
Yep.
Thank you.
And there is a cross out on property, and it says motor vehicle excise tax bills only. Any other discussion? Hearing none, the clerk will call the roll. A yes vote is on adoption of 11A. A no vote is to deny it.
Lacey?
Yes.
Lopez?
Yes.
McGee?
Yes.
McGivern?
Yes.
Roman?
Yes.
Sullivan?
Yes.
Tallman?
Yes.
Bacon?
Yes.
Valentine?
Yes.
Bartley?
Yes.
Bresnahan?
Yes.
Greenie?
Yes.
Bourdain?
Yes.
Leahy?
Yes.
Roberto Martinez?
He'd
Yes.
vote for it.
Oh, excuse me. Thank you.
I'm sorry, you heard me? I said yes, I'm sorry.
I know, sorry. 14 yeas.
By your vote, you have adopted 11A. 11B. The Committee on Ordinance, to whom was referred an order that the Hoyoke Police Department provide panhandlers of the city a list of all social and medical services available to them. If they continue to panhandle after the notification and resist help, we will order more forceful action to deal with the public safety problems on our medians and intersections. Have considered the same, recommend that the order has been complied with. Councilors Vacan, Jourdain, Bartley, and Lopez.
A motion to receive and adopt the committee report.
Motion's been made and seconded to receive and adopt the committee report. Under discussion, Councilor Vacan.
Thank you, Mr. President. We had a really good discussion on this, and at least some of us on the committee were very happily surprised to learn that there's continuing outreach through our police department in a collaboration relative not only to the issues of people who are in unfortunate circumstances and panhandling, but people who may be in other circumstances throughout the city. Because there were a number of us who thought that the time when the chief came in last year was a one-time outreach endeavor. So we did learn that it's an ongoing thing, not targeting one certain group of people, but more responding to different circumstances, if you will. He did also address the matter of, which is referred to as sectioning people who are in acute distress and a danger to themselves and others. And Massachusetts is a very protective state relative to individual rights, whether it comes to mental health matters, drug issues, or other circumstances. So it is really quite a complicated and multi-step process if somebody is going to be in any way held or hospitalized against their will. So it is being utilized in our community on occasion. They are very unique and very infrequent circumstances that it rises to that level. To the degree that it is utilized, most cases that have been brought to the courts, I believe it was an over 80% percentage are granted. So it's something that's approached very carefully and with consideration of the individual and the family and surrounding circumstances. So it was a very helpful discussion. We learned a lot, and it was the unanimous opinion of the committee that the order had been complied with.
Great. Any other discussion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? So moved. 11C. 11C is a report from the Committee on Ordinance, to whom is referred an order that the City Council consider adopting a program similar to Albuquerque, New Mexico, There's a Better Way, or Portland, Oregon's Opportunity Crew, as an innovative and productive means for addressing the city's panhandling issues with meaningful work-based alternatives. The committee has considered this item and recommend that it be given leave to withdraw, and it's signed off by all 5 members of the Ordinance Committee.
Thank you, Mr. President. A motion to receive and adopt the committee report.
Motion's been made. Is there a second?
Second.
Second, that the committee report be received and adopted. Under discussion, Councilor Vacan.
Thank you, Mr. President. The committee had taken up a couple of orders together, and so the discussion from the chief included different aspects that point to that a little bit. After further discussion within the committee, the maker of the order asked to have this order given leave to withdraw at this time to be further addressed perhaps in a different manner in the future.
Okay. Any other discussion? Hearing none. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? So moved. That
Mr.
is.
President, if I may,
Yes.
Under suspension of the rules, I would like to ask that the body would consider taking an order out of committee that was actually voted on at our meeting at the end of November, but there was a technical error so that it didn't get on our last agenda.
So you want to make a motion to remove it from committee?
Yes, I would like to make a motion to remove it from committee so that we can act on it tonight.
You have the item?
I do. It was originally agenda item number 20.
Could you give it to the administrative assistant to give to me to read?
Okay.
Thank you. Thank you, sir. Okay. Counselor Vacan has made a motion to remove from committee an item formerly marked item 20 on the December 5th, 2017 agenda that was referred to the Ordinance Committee for consideration. This item was originally introduced by Counselor McGee that the City Council accept the pilot agreement for C2MA for a Kelly Way Solar LLC. So Counselor Vacan makes a motion to remove this item from committee. And is there a second to that?
Second.
Okay. All in favor? Opposed? So moved.
Okay,
Counselor
so
Vacan.
thank you. So the motion would be to receive and adopt the agreement for the pilot.
I'll second that. Motion's been made and seconded to receive and approve of the pilot agreement, which, just for those in the room, there is a state statute that says the City Council has to approve any of these pilot agreements. And so that's why it's before the City Council. So they had submitted a agreement to us. So the motion on the floor is to receive and adopt the committee report and to adopt this order, which is that it be approved. Under discussion, Councilor Vacan.
So you may remember that there are a variety of solar projects. This particular solar project changed ownership, and so they came before us to have the pilot approved by the new owner. We had a couple technical questions around the change in ownership, clarified that in the case of these pilots that is allowable, and so on that basis the committee had recommended that we approve this agreement.
And you'll refresh the body's memory that this is at the same 5,000 rate as all the other ones?
Oh, okay. Certainly. These, we had reviewed them in some detail in the early days of the solar projects, and they were sort of established as a pro forma with a collaboration between the city and HG&E relative to these contracts. So this one was in keeping with the prior ones that we had approved in the past.
Any other discussion? Hearing none, clerk will call the roll. A yes vote is on adoption of this item, and this will require a roll call vote. So clerk will call the roll, please. Oh, yes, Councilor LeBron Martinez.
Where were these solars?
It's on Kelly Way.
Kelly Way up by the mall.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, they have a solar field there. I believe the solar field's already been approved.
Oh, yes, it's
but this is the
already there.
pilot for the tax calculation.
Right. Okay. Yeah, the project's already there.
Because I believe this is in a commercial or industrial area.
Industrial
Therefore,
park.
it's a whatever, not what's
Approval
that?
not required.
Thank you. Okay, clerk will call the roll. A yes vote is in favor of approving their agreement, and no vote is to deny it.
Lisi? Yes. Lopez?
Yes.
McGee? Yes. McGivern?
Yes.
Roman?
Yes.
Sullivan?
Yes.
Tolman?
Yes.
Bacon?
Yes.
Valentine?
Yes.
Bartley?
Yes.
Bresnahan?
Yes.
Jordan?
Yes.
Leahy?
Yes.
LeBron Martinez?
Yes.
Unanimous vote.
By your vote, you've approved that item for that organization.
Thank you.
And now we turn to, yes, no, I'm aware of Councilor McGee. I'm getting to him. We didn't have any Finance Committee reports for this particular meeting. However, there is a motion that Councilor McGee will be making to remove an item from committee. Correct, Councilor?
Yep. Make a motion to suspend the rules, pull an item from the committee. It's the one with regards to the CPA funds.
Yep. So
Second.
A motion's been made and seconded by Councilor McGee that the Holyoke CPA annual budget article, it's a agenda item that formally came in on the 21st of 2017 to the City Council. At that time, it was referred to Finance. and it reads as follows. Request for City Council vote to appropriate or reserve from the Community Preservation Fund annual revenues in the amounts recommended by the CPA Committee for committee's administrative expenses and reserves in fiscal year 2018, with each item to be considered a separate appropriation. And then if this is approved to be removed, I'll go into the different numerical numbers. All in favor of removing from committee?
Aye.
Opposed? So moved. It's now before the body. The appropriations would be as follows, that there would be a $22,500 appropriation from FY 2018 estimated revenues for the committee's administrative expenses. And from reserves, there would be $45,000 from estimated revenues for the Historic Resources Reserve, estimated revenues to be reserved for the Community Housing Reserve of $45,000, $45,000 also to be reserved for Open Space and Recreation Reserve, and then the remainder, $292,500, would be put in the budgeted reserve, which is the estimated revenues for FY 2018. Cumulatively, all of these reserves and the allowed appropriation of $22,500 totals $450,000, which is what the year one FY 18 estimate of revenue is from the city assessor. And the motion, Councilor McGee, is...
Did we take it out of committee?
Yes, we
all
already
right.
did
So
that.
make a motion to receive, adopt, pass the first reading.
Okay, motion's been made and seconded to receive and pass the first reading. Under discussion, Councilor McGee.
Yeah, at first we thought it was just a communication and then something we could, take a look at and review and then ultimately act upon it. But Andrew McMahon reached out to me and said that, and this is from his email, that the estimates that you just told everyone about, the $45,000 each area as well as the $22,500, he says it's most important that the City Council approve the proposed budget prior to setting the tax rate in order for our committee and the city in general to have access to the account in the coming year. So although we thought we were able to just look at it and do everything, it now is, there's a time frame to it, something that we weren't aware of. So I said we'd try and take it up tonight to try and address it, seeing how we're getting towards the end.
The only thing I'll point out, and just if the clerk can check into this, is I'm totally supportive of this, but there could be a procedural snafu in that I believe still the mayor needs to come in with this budget allocation and reserve and have him sign off on this. Just for the record, I'm looking at a piece of paper with a budget on it, but there's no mayoral signature on this at all. And I believe this is supposed to, and I believe I mentioned at one of the CPA committee meetings was they have to go to the mayor submit the budget to the city council approve budget, and everyone lives happily ever after. This is not controversial. This is the amount earmarked that they can use for administrative. That number 22,500, I believe, is 5% of their budget, which is what they're allowed to spend for that. These other 10% reserves are all articulated by statute, so you have to reserve those amounts for those purposes, and then the rest is just a leftover account. So this is totally what the statute says. It's just, I believe this is supposed to come from the mayor and be signed off and then come to us for approval. If this will work, great. If it doesn't,
Hence why we thought it was a communication.
Friendly reminder that at least I mentioned this, if someone could at least look into that. So hopefully it'll all work out. So we're at first reading on this communication and on adoption of those. So is there any other discussion? Hearing none, all in favor of passing the first reading?
Aye.
Opposed? So moved.
Pass the second reading.
Motion's been made and seconded to pass the second reading. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, the clerk will call the roll. A yes vote is to adopt these transfers that don't have a mayoral signature, but to pass these transfers, the clerk will call the roll. A yes vote is to adopt the second reading, and no vote is to deny.
Lisi?
Yes.
Lopez?
Yes.
McGee?
Yes.
McGivern?
Yes.
Roman?
Yes.
Sullivan?
Yes.
Tallman?
Yes.
Bacon?
Yes.
Valentine?
Yes.
Bartley?
No.
Bresnahan? No. Jordan?
Yes.
Leahy?
No.
LeBron Martinez?
Yes.
11 yeas, 3 nays.
By your vote, you've approved the purported transfer. Hopefully it all works out. Okay. We're now up to Public Safety Committee reports, and I know the chairman, Mr. Bresnahan's just raring to go here. So he's got a long list of items. So I don't know if he wants to grace us with any combos or anything like that.
A through H as a package, Mr. President.
Nice.
Second.
You're the most popular guy in the room. All right. Motion on the floor is to take up agenda items 13A through 13H as a package. All in favor of that rule suspension?
Aye.
Opposed? So moved. 13A is the Committee on Public Safety, which is all of these, was referred in order that the Planning Department provide the Public Safety Committee an updated report with regard to 160 Water Street. The committee looked into it. Information was to be provided within 2 weeks. The committee reviewed it and said it's been complied with. 13B, Public Safety looked at an order relative to the DPW and Fire Department providing different bonding options for repairing and replacing traffic lights. That matter was considered and has been deemed complied with. 13C, the Public Safety Committee considered an ordinance that Holyoke make a major push towards recycling in public areas by using recycling containers, by putting them out at school playgrounds and fields, that any store that requests a DPW provided recycling container be given one to promote recycling. 13D, that the DPW consider placing a sign at the parcel of land just before the parking lot at Kenny Field that reads "Slow Children at Play." That has been complied with. 13E, that the Department of Public Works install a much larger sign at the corner of Hamden and Lincoln that reads "Use Turn Signals." That has been complied with. 13F, that the DPW superintendent and city forester be invited to the committee to discuss removing dead trees and tree stumps, as well as planting replacement trees, and discuss having a budget and an action plan. That has been complied with. 13G is that an order that the police department provide a detailed list of any crimes occurring in the last 12 months on various addresses throughout Ward 2, and that this data be provided upon receipt and provide a copy both to Councilor Roman as well as the committee, that order has been complied with. 13H, that the police department use their authority under Chapter 123, Section 35 to protect any person who lost the power of self-control and is dangerous to their own health, that this law allows the commitment of an individual to a public or private facility for the care and treatment after a hearing. Recommend that item has been complied with. Motion on the floor has been made and seconded to receive and adopt all the committee recommendations. And under discussion, I would recognize the chairman, Councilor Bresnahan, for any thoughts he'd like to share with us.
Thank you, Mr. President. Very briefly, with respect to 13C, if any councilors are interested in having recycle bins at some parks in their wards or in the neighborhoods, please reach out to Mike. He's not against the idea. He says the problem is that when he puts recycle bins out, if they put in any other trash except what can be recycled, it all has to go into the regular streamline of waste. But there are certain recycle bins that can be used that only can fit glass bottles and cans and that sort of thing. So he's open to the idea. They tried it in the past. It didn't work. So if there's a couple parks you're interested in trying it at, with respect to any orders that had to do with putting slow children, let's say, or the traffic signals, he's going to do that. I have the report for Nelson with respect to the wards or that areas that you were talking about. I also have that same report for Councilor McGee on his order. If there's any makers of the orders that have any direct questions regarding any of these, I'd be happy to talk to them on air, off air. If there's any members of the committee that was there that want to speak, have at it. Thank you very much.
Any thoughts or discussion? Hearing none. All in favor of adopting all the committee recommendations? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? So moved. We did not have any Public Service Committee reports for this particular meeting, so now we're moving on to DG&R. And would Councilor Bartley like to be as equally as popular as Councilor Bresnahan?
That's so true. I was.
Any of these can be combined?
I'm sure they can, but I'm going to defer to the vice chair. I was under the weather, so I was unable to attend. So Councilor McGivern chaired the meeting last night.
All right, Councilor McGivern.
We have a few roll call votes, Mr. President, and they are to, I will do them quickly, but they are votes that have to be taken separately.
Okay. Any of the items that we could bulk up that don't require roll call votes?
It's only 15E, and that's a quick one, but we can do that at the end.
Okay. So the rest of these are all roll calls?
Correct.
And is there
three are roll calls, but they're separate, and I don't think they're controversial, but I think we do have to do them.
Could we potentially take all the roll calls together and one roll call vote by putting them as a package? Particularly if they're not of a controversial nature and nobody wants them separated out.
If there's no objections, 15A, 15B, and 15C should be roll calls.
Second.
And we could do that if there's no objections, if we do them unanimous.
All right. So the motion on the floor is to suspend the rules to take 15A, 15B, 15C as a package. There will be some roll call votes on this momentarily. All in favor of suspending the rules to take these all as a package and vote on them as a package? All in favor of that?
Aye.
Opposed? So moved. Let me just go through these. 15A, these are all DG&R committee reports. 15A is, to whom was referred a special permit application of Eric Cassidy for a non-conforming use under 4.7.2 at 187 Sargent Street / 301 Linden Street to change from a barber shop to a chiropractor's office, have considered the same, recommend that the special permit be approved. All 5 members of DG&R signed off on that. 15B is from a communication from Alicia Zeller from OCD, as we know, Community Development, regarding the FY17 annual plan for reprogramming of CDBG funds. Have considered the same, recommend that the CDBG plan funds be reprogrammed as presented, and there is a Excel sheet of who's getting what and the changes if you need me to go through that level of detail. 15C is a report from the Committee on DG&R also that in accordance with Mass General Law, Chapter 40, Section 4A, Council approve an intermunicipal agreement between the towns of Amherst, Holyoke, Northampton, the Pioneer Valley Planning Commission, the City of Springfield, the University of Massachusetts Amherst for a regional bike share program to replace the prior approved intermunicipal agreement dated December 2015. DG&R recommends that all 3 of these items be approved. I would entertain a motion to receive and adopt the committee reports.
Motion to receive, adopt.
Motion's been made and seconded to receive and adopt the committee reports and to approve these special permits as well as the adoption of that intermunicipal agreement articulated at 15C. And I now turn it over to Councilor McGivern for
Thank you,
discussion.
Mr. President. We did miss our chairman. I'll note that was the first time, I think, since our new DGR committee was put together, and certainly the first time since David was chairman that he was unable to join us, but we were able to get through a fairly good agenda. The 15A is real simple. The petition is under Mr. Eric Cassidy. He's the property manager. His brother William owns it. Lives out in Portland. The nonconforming use is very simple. If you're familiar with this property, it's on the corner of Linden and Sargent. It was up until a couple months ago used, it's a residential home, but the downstairs predating our zoning ordinances was always used as commercial up until 2 months ago as a barber shop. They actually evicted the tenants at the time for a number of different reasons, and what we determined last night, which was our charge for a non-conforming permit use of this, was that the new use will be less detrimental than the existing use. We met with a Dr. Hudson, who's a chiropractor who wants to run her practice out of the office. There will be no dimensional changes. She expects at the most 1 to 2 people per hour. She was very much in touch with the neighborhood, lives across the street, and wants to keep it the neighborhood and certainly as a residential neighborhood, but at the same time be able to use this. Item 15B, Lisa Zoller came before us. This is not unusual. Typically happens not every year, but during the course of the year when CDBG monies need to be reprogrammed. HUD tells us that if it's a significant change dollar-wise, we do have to go through the process similar to the block grant process itself. What Kevin referred to, we do have a list of it, and she went through it line item by line item. Some of the good news was that sidewalk bids came in under bid. There are a number of, the facade program has been suspended again, not because it's a bad program, but because there's been no one took it up this year, and they want to reuse the monies for other things that we are all, I think, aware of as priorities. Some of the priorities and the new things are additional monies for demolition, the Mountain Road remediation, Jones Ferry access fence, and a neighborhood improvement program, which has always been very popular. And as Kevin stated, the committee recommends that we take our vote. The Citizens Advisory Committee held a public hearing as they were required, and they are taking up until January 1st public comment, written public testimony. The final roll call vote is Mass General Laws, Chapter 40A. I think everybody might remember we previously have adopted a memorandum of understanding that the city would enter into an agreement with the town of Amherst, Northampton, Pioneer Valley Planning Commission, Springfield, and University of Massachusetts for the regional bike share program. It's fascinating. I think we all went through. There is a grant that is being administered by the town of Northampton. Northampton is the lead community. The good news with this new memorandum of understanding, why we've been asked to adopt the changes, it's probably the most significant change, is Northampton has hired a vendor. The vendor is going to run the program, is going to run the grant, if I'm pronouncing it correctly, Bursrun, and Northampton will be responsible for the contract, but the vendor will assume all liability. We are no longer under any liability for whatever might happen with a lost bike or something like that. I know the president is talking about with his free time after he leaves the council is being able to hop on one of these bikes and take them, not just around Holyoke, but
Here's
maybe
a bike ride,
down to Springfield and back. It's a win-win for the situation. I would recommend, and the committee recommends, that we adopt all three of these.
Great.
Oh, boy. Wow. Kids keep coming.
Well,
as far as the chiropractor's office goes, as long as they don't leave trash out on the tree belt and they're not open till midnight, they've got to be better for the neighborhood than anything else.
I didn't want to bring some of the reasons for the evictions to light, but I think most of us, especially the ward councilor, would know that.
Yeah, we could get into all kinds of good details on that, but. Motion on the floor is to adopt all of these. Is there any other discussion?
Just
yes, Councilor Leahy.
I think that Councilor Graney, Councilor Lopez, and yourself are leaving on kind of a historic moment, whereas Councilor McGivern chaired not only Department of Government Relations, but also chartered rules in the same month. This has been awesome.
2 meetings in the same month.
Huge.
On charter and rules.
It's been fun.
I've been very quiet, Councilor Leahy, but you're following in Councilor Jordan's footsteps in many areas, as you cited, and I have no doubt you'll be up at that podium someday in the future if you choose to stick this out. I have no doubt that you might umpire a baseball game or two, perhaps even referee a basketball game, but you will never be the voice of Holyoke High football.
No.
Actually,
that job I plan on keeping for a while.
Actually, if I can correct the good counselor, that's what I did in high school when I.
Oh, did you?
Yeah, when I did my week and a half of double sessions, and I realized football was not for this Leahy. I was the announcer, and like you, Kevin, I got paid for it.
There you go. Wow, that's it.
I stand corrected.
Was it work release?
All right. We have this item before us, these three items, I should say, 15A, B, and C. If there's no further discussion, I'll kindly ask the clerk to call the roll, and we'll vote. Clerk will call the roll, please. A yes vote is in favor of adopting A and B, and for that matter, C. Clerk will call the roll, please.
Lisi?
Yes.
Lopez?
Yes.
McGee? McGivern?
Yes.
Roman?
Yes.
Sullivan?
Yes.
Tallman?
Yes.
Bacon? Valentine?
Yes.
Bartley?
Yes.
Bresnahan?
Yes.
Jordan?
Yes.
Leahy?
Yes.
LeBron Martinez?
Yes.
Unanimous vote.
Mr. President, I think we could also combine 15D and E if there's no objection.
That's the spirit.
Motion to suspend the rules to take up 15D and 15E as a package. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, so moved. 15D. DGNR considered an order that the City Council present our representatives in Boston with a resolution in support of Sheriff Cochise plans for substance abuse and recovery facility at the jail. That is recommended for adoption. And 15E is that they considered a constituent letter regarding a property, making a property across from Sam's convenience store into a community garden, have considered that item and referred the letter to the mayor. And the motion would be to adopt the two.
Motion to receive, adopt, send a letter of support, and refer the second item to the mayor.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded to receive and adopt both committee reports. One involves item 1, which is to have us do a letter of support. Item number 2 is to refer the matter to the mayor for consideration. Under discussion, Councilor McGivern.
We think historically, Mr. President, this could be your last letter of support on our behalf, so we all want to get a framed copy.
Of course.
With the
As a matter of
signature.
fact, after the meeting, I'm doing signed editions of the agenda. If you want to put those up on eBay,
Real quickly, Councilor Sullivan's order, Councilor Bresnahan made a part of his report this evening, touched on Section 35, the importance of a civil commitment. Councilor Sullivan is very up to date on all of this. I work in the trial court with, he has a letter of support from Judge Walsh, who's our administrative judge, who is a tremendous woman, a very intelligent woman. And I think years to come, this city and region are going to recognize her more and more. Section 35 is a civil commitment. Sheriff Cochise is doing a great job. He wants to take on, and if he can get some support, financial support from the state, beds that would bring beds into this area. Currently, Mike points out that most of these referrals, or almost all of these referrals, go to Plymouth County and 2 or 3 different facilities down there. Section 35s can also, if the person has the correct insurance, can go to private and not-for-profit agencies and beds themselves. It's not a jail sentence. Technically, the person can walk out of there. The idea is that they're at their last leg under some duress for some type of substance abuse, and they need this direly, and it does work. What we're doing is a letter of support to help Nick Cochise get some money from the state to open up a wing or some beds out in Ludlow. Mike, I don't know if Mike wants to add a couple of words, but Mike is very much on top of this.
Mike?
Yep. Just so everybody knows, that this program that he'd like to adopt out there, they do have this program up and running in Essex County, and it's tremendously successful, whereas what we're seeing right now is a recidivism rate of about 99%. In other words, it's a complete failure the way it's running here in this town. Well, not just this town, in the entire western end of the state. That includes Berkshire County and Hampshire County, as well, Franklin County. It's very successful down in Essex County, like a 30% recovery rate, which in this form of addiction and stuff is incredible. So he's got the staff, the space, the beds available, the training in place. It's a very comprehensive program, and the most important thing, I think, is that it includes follow-up, outreach afterwards and follow-up. And just a couple of words quickly here from Judge Walsh in her letter and from her meeting, so we all know the civil commitment to those who have alcohol and or substance use disorders is still on the rise. The heroin epidemic certainly appears to be the prevalent reason. The need for treatment beds statewide is an issue with which we all struggle. And one thing I'd really like to get into record too, she continues to be impressed by the manner in which the Holyoke Police Department responds to the needs of its citizens in this as well as many other areas, which ties back to 11B and 13H on tonight's agenda. Thank you.
Great. Any other discussion?
Just real quickly on 15E, because we're voting together. The gentleman who wrote the letter, Kevin, I didn't write down his name, but he came in had a chance to talk to him prior to the meeting. I explained to him we had a couple public hearings and a lengthy agenda, but we would get to the item as quickly as we could. I also explained to him that for a couple reasons and he has a lot of passion about this. He's only lived in Holyoke for a few years, but he sees the vacant lot across from Sam's, which we determined was actually property that's owned by the Haberman family that is adjacent to the store itself. Because it's private property, we explained to him that the city really can't get involved directly. We're not going to rent it. We're not going to really be able to use it ourselves. However, that we perhaps could ask the mayor's office with their if they could reach out to the Habermans, and maybe until that property finds another use, that they might be able to negotiate something. Ryan, we did ask him to call you in a day or two to see where this goes, but I think it's worth at least giving the mayor's office a shot to see if they can do something with the Habermans.
Yeah, we'll debrief on that, yeah.
Can I,
yes, Councilor LeBron Martinez.
Yeah, I'm all favor for community gardens, but I wonder, when they do these gardens, do they do the testing for these soils to make sure that if they're really doing some work in particular that one there, I'm concerned because it was a burned building.
Right.
And
I would hope so.
So, do they have to, I know Nuestra Raíces does that, but anyone else that comes and does, is just an individual, do they have the money to do that kind of work? I'm just curious.
Well, it's a good question. Like, for example, on Cabot Street, we have a big community garden right where the old Precious Blood Church was.
Right. Yeah.
Did they just take the foundation? I doubt they took the foundation and all the stuff that was in the basement of the church out before they started making rows of tomatoes. So I wonder, how that all played out.
It's a very good question. Same thing on Pine.
It's for extra vitamins.
That was another fire where the community garden ended up. Maybe we can file an order and see if we can get the appropriate department and find out if they are checking out the contamination in the soil.
Right. I saw a hand up on this side of the room. Councilor Tallman.
Yeah, just getting back to 15D, I think that was great that Councilor Sullivan brought that up, and they had a good discussion on that. And I think it's important that people do get some help, and I think key word there is follow-up, how people's lives can be changed, if they get followed up and really can, really get work and be productive members of society again, and just give them a chance. So I think it's important and vital that we get that letter of support to them. So, thank you.
Okay, great. I think everybody has spoken that wanted to speak, I believe. And so all in favor of adopting those two DG&R committee reports?
Aye.
Opposed? So moved. We have no more committee reports for the evening, sorry to say. And now we move to motions, orders, and resolutions. Next up is item 19. As you'll recall, we already dispensed with 18 and 20.
Receive for the Committee on Finance.
Okay.
Second.
Motion has been made and seconded to receive item number 19, refer it to Finance. This is for injured on duty transfers of $11,000 for police and fire departments. Motion on the floor is to send item number 19 to Finance. Under discussion, Councilor Bacon.
Thank you, Mr. President. I just want to note that we have requested a legal opinion relative to some of the use of these transfers that hopefully we'll have for our meeting. Thank you.
Okay. All in favor of referring to Finance?
Aye.
Opposed? So moved. Item number 21. Okay, motion's been made and seconded to receive a order filed by Councilor McGee, which is that the City Council adopt the provisions of Chapter 44, Section 53A, the U.S. Department of Justice Cops Hiring Program Award Grant. Motion on the floor is to receive it and to refer it to Finance. Any discussion? Hearing none. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? So moved. Item number 22 is introduced by Councilor Roman. Okay, motion's been made and seconded to suspend the rules to take 22, 24, and 25 as a package. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? So moved. 22 is that there be 15-minute only parking spot established at 733 High Street. 24 is a handicap sign be put in front of 330 Walnut. 25, that a handicap sign be put in front of 545 South Bridge Street.
Ordinance with 24 and 25 getting a copy to the disabilities.
Motion on the floor has been made and seconded to receive and refer 22, 24, and 25 to ordinance with a copy of 24 and 25 also to the Disabilities Commission. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? So moved. Item number 23 is introduced by Councilor Roman, that the city approve the following contract for shared services for a food service director with the city of Springfield to be paid by the school department out of its budget. Shared director cost will be $30,000, and that'll be shared with Springfield.
Joint committee.
And motion has been made and seconded to receive 23 and refer to the Joint Committee on City Council and School Committee.
Would that have to go to finance too?
Not necessarily.
No.
No. All in favor of receiving and referring to the Joint Committee?
Aye.
Opposed? So moved. Item number 26 is introduced by Councilor Vacan. That states that the DPW trimmed the bush on a city land near the driveway of the apartments where it enters Whitney Avenue to improve visibility for drivers.
Receive and adopt and refer to DPW, please.
Motion's been made and seconded to receive, adopt, and refer item 26 and refer it to the DPW. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? So moved. Item number 27 is introduced by Councilor Bartley, that a city official apprised the city council on the status of repairs, including the collection mechanism at the 2 parking garages, Prue and Topier, as well as provide the contract information on the new parking vendor.
I think that should go to the Finance Committee, please.
Motion's been made and seconded to receive and refer to the Finance Committee. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? So moved. Item number 28 is introduced by Councilor Jordan. Ordered that a no parking from here to corner sign on Portland Street at the intersections of Mackenzie and Magnolia Avenues be replaced with a new sign. Motion would be made and seconded to receive, adopt, refer to the DPW. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
So moved. Item number 29, introduced by Councilor Lopez, that the building commissioner provide the following information about his 50-inch TV screen in his office within 10 days of the council. Total cost of the TV and in its install, reasons and purposes for buying such a TV, can the TV be returned and the city refunded?
Receiving a and sent to the building department and finance.
Okay, motion's been made and seconded to receive, how about refer to finance with a copy to the building commissioner?
Yes.
For a response? Okay, motion's been made and seconded to receive, refer item number 29, refer it to finance committee with a copy to the building commissioner for answers. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? So moved. Item number 30. Introduced by Councilors Lopez, Bresnahan, and Vacan, that the Ordinance Committee create an ordinance requesting that any city credit card or debit card given by the city must get approval from the City Council. Also, that the City Treasurer provide a report to the City Council with the following details: who has a debit card or credit card in the city. Treasurer auditor provide a report to the City Council with each credit card and debit card for the last 5 years, that all active credit cards and debit cards be deactivated immediately, and that we get a printout of all purchases and transactions that the card has been used for. Ordinance?
Yes.
Okay.
Mr. President?
Councilor Vacan.
I would just note that I think it was 2 years ago, it was stipulated to us out of legal department that there were no credit cards in use in the city. Just FYI.
Is that writing?
It was on the mic from legal.
They're back. Apparently, if that's true. Each member with an unlimited expense account with World Travel. Okay, very good. Motion's been made and seconded, receive, refer to the Ordinance Committee. All in favor? Opposed?
Aye.
Item number 31. Unfortunately, it's our last item of the evening. Item number 31 is introduced by Councilor Lopez, that disabled parking lot be created for Nathaniel Santiago, who is a child who resides at 577 South Bridge Street. House has a narrow driveway, making it difficult for the child. I believe you mean a parking space, as opposed to a whole parking lot. Okay.
We don't need it.
Okay, to say, change word lot to space. All in favor of that amendment? Aye. All in favor of receiving, referring to ordinance with a copy to the Disability Commission?
Aye.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? So moved. I'd use my gavel, but it's now on a plaque. So, is there a motion to adjourn? Motion's been made and second to adjourn. It's been a pleasure to be with all of you for these many, many years. All in favor of adjourning? Opposed? We stand adjourned.
Good fun to you.
Yeah, so you take care.
And that's the end of the movie.
Take your name tag.
Yeah, I'm gonna.
Otherwise, I'm going to sell on eBay.
No, I have the other one with my.